Chapter 1176. Only now did Lin Jun truly see this man for who he was. He's so strong. Lin Jun narrowed his eyes. Ever since he broke through to become a mid-god, Lin Jun had never met a high god. Lin Jun had even felt that high gods were just so. But the man in front of him had clearly shattered his beliefs and made him feel powerful. Just by standing there, it was as if he had gathered the sharpness of heaven and earth into his body. He was a sword, a spear, and could unleash the sharpest attack at any time. Moreover, his divine power was clearly a level higher than Lin Jun's. Under normal circumstances, his divine power was over 2 million. It must be known that Lin Jun's divine power was currently at 51 million. It was very difficult for him to meet an opponent. And this man's divine power was almost 1 million lower than Lin Jun's. This was a quasi-god king level expert, without a doubt. This was his first time facing such an expert. Lin Jun didn't shrink back. Standing in front of him, he released his divine power to the maximum. Seeing Lin Jun release his divine power, Hedgehog was stunned. Haha, not bad. Your divine power is actually over 4 million. But unfortunately, in front of me, you're still not enough. Whether it's enough or not, you'll only know after you try. Arrogant. Today, I'll let you know what it means to be invincible below the God King level. Hedgehog raised his hand, and a double-edged halberd appeared in his hand. The halberd was 5 meters long and shrouded in a golden aura. It was a high-grade weapon. Hedgehog immediately released his divine power. In an instant, his divine power soared to over 6 million. Die. The halberd chopped down fiercely. The person behind Hedgehog had long since retreated far away when he took out his halberd. Under this attack, the halberd shone like the sun in a clear sky, emitting thousands of rays of golden light. The surrounding space faintly showed signs of collapsing. Lin Jun resolutely met the attack with the jackdaw sword in hand. Clang! The huge impact formed a shockwave like a stone thrown into water, sending out circles of ripples in the air. Lin Jun's body was blasted back several hundred meters. The difference in strength between the two was still too great. Lin Jun's divine power was no match for his opponent. Especially the opponent's halberd, which was as heavy as a mountain. Lin Jun felt his arm go numb. Ah, now you know how powerful I am. Brat, remember not to be too arrogant after you die. Hedgehog's attack was successful. He looked up to the sky and laughed. The gods in the dimensional arena far away were clapping and cheering with all their might. Lin Jun stabilized his body and swung his arm. Luckily, with the leech gene, his resistance and recovery ability were very strong. Although his strength was not as strong as the opponent, such an attack could not cause him any harm. Don't think you've won just like that. Again. Lin Jun's light-chasing beast genes gave him super-fast speed. In the next second, he appeared in front of the hedgehog. Stinking brat, your speed is pretty fast. But even if you do it 100 more times, the result will still be the same. Hedgehog brandished his halberd again. The metal aura on it was even stronger. Clearly, this attack was even more powerful. The halberd swept past Lin Jun's neck. Hedgehog's face revealed a sinister smile. He could almost see Lin Jun's head falling to the ground. Senior, be careful. Osto cried out from behind him. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew from behind his head. The cold air was threatening. How is this possible? Hedgehog never would have dreamed that Lin Jun could teleport. He didn't have time to dodge this attack. The sword hit the back of his head. A streak of sparks flew past his head. Lin Jun's jackdaw had sliced off a chunk of his scalp. If he hadn't dodged in time of crisis, this attack would have caused him serious damage. Lin Jun clicked his tongue. What a tough head. I can't believe Jackdaw wasn't able to finish him off. Hedgehog's eyes blazed with fury. At the same time, he realized that today's opponent was going to be difficult to deal with. This was the first time he'd seen an opponent who could teleport within the Mirror Lake continent. Now it would be difficult to kill Lin Jun quickly. Good, good, good. Devil-masked man, you do have the right to be arrogant. But you shouldn't have angered me like this. This will only lead to your death. Now the real battle begins. Hedgehog roared. His halberd came crashing down like a storm. This time, he was even more careful of Lin Jun's teleportation. It would be impossible for Lin Jun to kill him as easily as the first time. Lin Jun had finally witnessed the true power of anyone below the Divine King level. Hedgehog's body was as hard as steel, and his battle techniques were top-notch. His combat experience was no less than Lin Jun's. If it weren't for the fact that he could teleport to relieve pressure and avoid attacks, Lin Jun would be at a complete disadvantage. Even with teleportation, Lin Jun was still at a disadvantage. After all, there was a 2 million godly power gap between them. Hedgehog was strong, but Lin Jun couldn't back down. To be able to fight such an expert was a rare experience. With the Leech Gene and the Chaser Beast Gene, Lin Jun was confident that he could keep this up. The battle between the two began with a loud rumble. Before the battle began, the people in the dimensional arena believed that Lin Jun would be easily annihilated by Hedgehog, but they never expected the devil-masked man to be so strong. The two of them fought from the sky to the ground, from the ground to the volcano, and occasionally, they would soar into the sky from the volcano before fighting back into the sky. Hedgehog's seemingly ferocious attacks couldn't deal any fatal damage to Lin Jun. It wasn't easy to hit this person who often disappeared and reappeared in another place. Even if he succeeded, Hedgehog would recover quickly and come back again. The fight went from morning to dusk, from dusk to midnight, and from midnight to dawn. After a whole day of fighting, the surrounding volcanic area was in ruins. The gods, who had been cheering for Hedgehog in the beginning, were now a little sleepy. The two of them won't keep fighting like this, right? It's hard to say. Master Hedgehog is stronger, but he's not strong enough to kill Devil-Masked Man instantly. This person's recovery ability is too strong. If this continues, it'll be a war of 1,000 days. It's a pity that when Master Hedgehog attacks, no one else is allowed to interfere. Otherwise, everyone would attack together and kill this bastard. Hearing the others' discussion, Osto finally said, "Don't worry. Master Hedgehog hasn't used his true strength yet. Just watch. When he uses his ultimate move, the battle will be over." At that moment, there was finally a change in the battle between the two. Lin Jun sacrificed himself and attacked Hedgehog, injuring his arm. Hedgehog didn't continue this attack. After taking 2 steps back, he suddenly roared. A golden nebula surged out of his god world and instantly covered a radius of 1,000 miles. Chapter 1177. The battle between Hedgehog and Lin Jun for the entire day was finally coming to an end. Once his golden nebula appeared, all the metal energy in the world seemed to gather there. The volcano, the mirror lake, the beach, and the sky. Billions of rays of light shone upon each other. All the metal elemental energy broke through the air and formed an inescapable net around his nebula. Hedgehog was the core of the nebula. He looked down at Lin Jun from above. In his palm, a golden disk floated. This disk was the core of the nebula. "This is metal field, a domain-type armor." Lin Jun squinted his eyes. He didn't expect Hedgehog to have domain-type armor. His mastery of metal elemental energy had reached such a level. But no matter how desperate the situation was, Lin Jun wasn't the kind of person who would give up. He had survived the metal elemental tribulation. Of course, he wouldn't give up just like that. Devil-masked man, pay the price for your arrogance. Hedgehog waved his hand. Streaks of metal energy crisscrossed between heaven and earth. They covered the sky and covered Lin Jun. Lin Jun snorted. What a powerful metal field. But how long can you last against such a powerful field? Facing the strongest metal energy, Lin Jun teleported away. Hedgehog laughed uproariously. At the very least, it won't be a problem for me to hold on until I kill you. I know you've cultivated the leech gene, but can you withstand the attacks of the endless gold chi? Hedgehog waved his hand. The golden disc in his hand spun faster. The metal energy almost covered the entire space. Lin Jin kept teleporting, but each time he teleported, it was more dangerous than the last. Lin Jin wanted to launch a sneak attack on the hedgehog. However, every time he got close to the hedgehog, the domain equipment would send out a powerful shockwave, riddling Lin Jin's body with holes. After a few times, Lin Jin's recovery speed couldn't even keep up with the attack speed of the metal energy. If this continued, he would die. What a powerful field armor! It puts me in a passive position. Fortunately, I still need the mysterious yellow pagoda. Metal energy is strong, but it is still a type of energy. Let's see if you can break through the defense of the mysterious yellow pagoda. Lin Jin pointed his finger. The mysterious yellow pagoda appeared above his head. It spun. The mysterious yellow pagoda's energy was like a river hanging upside down, blocking the metal energy in the sky. The metal energy came crackling up. Although it was powerful, it couldn't break through the mysterious yellow pagoda's defense. Seeing such a scene, the spectators were dumbfounded. No way! Hedgehog's field armor! God! If even Sir Hedgehog can't do anything to the masked man, what can we do? Do we really have to ask the god? Hedgehog himself didn't expect Lin Jin to be so difficult to deal with. His face had already turned ashen. One must know that not only were there people from the dimensional arena spectating the battle, there were also many other spectators. If word of this got out, it would only increase the prestige of the devil-masked man, damage the reputation of the hedgehog, and bring shame to the reputation of the arena. Hedgehog would never allow this to happen. However, Lin Jin was more slippery than a loach. He could teleport and dodge in a head-on battle. Hedgehog took out his field armor, but Lin Jin also had the mysterious yellow pagoda. Damn it! I'm Hedgehog, but you're the hedgehog. I don't know where to start. Hedgehog looked around and took a deep breath. He had already said that he had to take down Lin Jin today. Lin Jin, good job. You've really opened my eyes. If I can't take you down today, I'll kill myself here. Lin Jin laughed. If you have the ability, then do it. Don't talk like a sissy. Don't you feel ashamed? Come, Hedgehog. Let's see who's invincible below the God King now. The hedgehog roared and transformed back into his galactic beast form. He was originally a mutated galactic swordback dragon. Because he betrayed the Galactic Beast Alliance and refused to admit his identity, he had lived in his human form for hundreds of millions of years. He had never revealed his true form. However, Lin Jin had forced him to this point. He had no choice but to reveal his true form again. Hedgehog shook his head and wagged his tail. This swordback dragon was tens of thousands of meters long. It was thousands of meters tall and was comparable to Mount Everest in the sky. Thousands of golden bone spikes grew from its back. Each of those bone spikes was almost at the level of an armor. They were incomparably sharp. Roar. Hedgehog, you forced me to do this. I didn't want to show myself, but you pushed me too far. I had no choice but to reveal my true form to take you down. Even a God King would have to be careful in my battle form. Lin Jin faced Hedgehog, who had revealed his true form, but his expression remained unchanged. I'm not a God King. I can deal with you as I wish. You traitor of the Alliance, it seems like I'll have to clean up the sect today. Cut the crap. I'll show you my strongest technique. Flying swords. Hedgehog shook his body. Thousands of bone spikes rose from his back and pierced through the clouds. The clouds were filled with gold chi stars. Each of these bone spikes had absorbed enough gold chi and were at the level of a low-grade armor. With a buzzing sound, countless sword lights lingered in the sky and formed a huge killing array. Hedgehog, your mysterious yellow pagoda can isolate energy, but it can't isolate physical objects. My bone spikes now have the power of a low-grade armor. There are more than 30,000 of them. Let's see if your mysterious yellow pagoda can withstand them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Although Lin Jun spoke casually, he was actually in the midst of the greatest crisis. The mysterious yellow pagoda had lost its ability to block the flying sword-like bone spike. Lin Jun tried to block one of the bone spikes and felt the immense power it contained. There was no way he could block tens of thousands of bone spikes. Lin Jun could only rely on teleportation to dodge back and forth in the sky, constantly circling around. Whoosh! A bone spike pierced through Lin Jun's shoulder. Before Lin Jun could recover, 3 more bone spikes pierced through Lin Jun's abdomen. Whoosh! 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 Another 5 bone spikes pierced through Lin Jun's legs. It seemed that his recovery speed could not keep up. Lin Jun gritted his teeth. These bone spikes were all controlled by Hedgehog. He still had one last trick up his sleeve. Lin Jun used the jackdaw to block the bone spike. Then, he activated his solar ring. With the help of the solar ring, Lin Jun forcefully launched a mental attack on Hedgehog. Since Hedgehog was not a divine king, his mental power had not reached the crystal formation stage. With the help of the solar ring, Lin Jun would definitely be able to attack Hedgehog's sea of consciousness. It was very likely that Lin Jun would be able to slow down the flying swords. Bang! Whoosh! The mental power blasted into Hedgehog's sea of consciousness. Instantly, the flying swords in the sky paused. Wahahaha! Kid, your mental power is so strong. Hedgehog was helpless against Lin Jun's attack. He could only forcefully use his domain armor to drive it and continue attacking Lin Jun. Lin Jun had no other tricks up his sleeve. He could only use the solar ring to drive his mental power to attack. Mental attack versus flying swords. It was a matter of who could not hold on first. Chapter 1178. No one had imagined that Lin Jun would be able to fight Hedgehog to this extent. Although Lin Jun had relied on Jackdaw, the mysterious yellow pagoda, and the Ring of Sun to do this, that was how martial artists were. The strength of their equipment was also a part of their strength. Otherwise, why would so many people fight for it? At this point in the battle, it was no longer a contest of strength, but of willpower. Hedgehog controlled his flying swords to attack Lin Jun, resisting Lin Jun's mental attack. Lin Jun used his powerful life force and regenerative abilities to block the flying swords. At the same time, he used his mental strength to bombard Hedgehog. The battle was so fierce that the spectators couldn't help but stare. Lord Hedgehog can do it. He can definitely hold on. No problem at all. He's a super powerhouse who's won 100 million battles in the dimensional arena. He's a quasi-god king. Everyone in the dimensional arena's palms were sweating as they constantly encouraged themselves and cheered for Hedgehog. But many things didn't go as one wished. After several exchanges, Hedgehog couldn't hold on any longer. I don't believe it. Hedgehog couldn't believe that he had lost to Lin Jun in a contest of willpower. Lin Jun stood there, pierced by tens of thousands of flying swords. He was clearly on the verge of collapse, but Hedgehog's mental attacks continued to bombard him. He would rather die than retreat, he would rather break than bend. Hedgehog's brain was about to turn to mush. He was already terrified. He knew that if this continued, he would be the one to lose. But he couldn't lose. He couldn't afford to lose. Hedgehog was a strong person. Even if he died, he would drag Lin Jun down with him. Hedgehog used the last of his strength to drive his domain disc. The disc spun wildly, and the golden energy in the air began to gather. All of the golden energy condensed, transforming into a force similar to heavenly tribulation. It was about to launch a final attack on Lin Jun. Metal was the first of the 5 elements. Hedgehog's billion years of accumulation gathered together. The power it contained was unimaginable. As for the metal disc, it couldn't withstand this power. Cracks began to appear on its surface. A low-grade domain equipment was about to be destroyed. At this moment, Lin Jun's dantian suddenly throbbed. When Lin Zhen had swallowed the heavenly tribulation's gold qi, it had formed a powerful mass of gold qi. Now, this mass of gold qi was actually being pulled by the gold qi from the outside world, and was about to leave his body. Hedgehog, who was about to cut off all means of retreat, froze for a moment before bursting into laughter. Its huge body twisted in the sky and it spoke in a human voice. Wahahaha! I can't believe you have the aura of primal chaos, golden qi, and heavenly tribulation. This is truly a case of traveling far and wide in search of something, only to find it by sheer luck. You actually have something that I've been searching for 1,000,000,000 years. This is a blessing from the heavens. With this primal chaos golden qi, my cultivation technique will be complete. The hedgehog roared furiously as if he had been injected with a stimulant. He urged his god power with all his might, trying to draw Lin Zhen's gold qi out of his body. Lin Zhen knew that if the gold qi was successfully absorbed by the hedgehog, he would lose this battle. He tried his best to stop it, but it was too late. Forget it. Cut off all means of retreat. The 102 Qin passes will belong to Chu. Let's fight. Lin Zhen was also determined. He pulled back and released the primal chaos golden qi out of his body. The two masses of gold qi met in the sky, and a qualitative change occurred. After 1,000,000,000 years of hard work, the hedgehog was excited and could not help but look over. But at this moment, Lin Zhen also transformed into his galactic beast. Roar! A black hole beast that was not smaller than the Stegosaurus appeared. It opened its mouth and released the black hole energy that had been suppressed for many years. Not good. This was the first time the hedgehog fought with Lin Zhen. He was not familiar with Lin Zhen and did not know Lin Zhen's fighting style. He did not expect Lin Zhen to have a black hole devouring technique. The galactic beast's body was huge, and it was too late to dodge. Lin Zhen's black hole devouring technique, with more than 4,000,000 stars of astral energy, was difficult for even a god king to block, let alone a quasi-god king like the hedgehog. The hedgehog twisted his body, but he could not block the black hole devouring technique. He went straight for the center of the black hole devouring technique. No. Ghost-masked man, if you dare to devour me, the gold qi will go out of control and you will die. Maybe, but you won't have the chance to see it. Lin Zhen did not show any mercy. The black hole devouring technique swallowed the hedgehog. At the same time, the domain equipment in the sky could not withstand the gold qi's power and exploded. A beam of golden light shot towards Lin Zhen. After Lin Zhen swallowed the hedgehog, he had no choice but to open his mouth and continue to devour the ball of golden qi. If I can devour you once, I can do it again. Come on. The black hole devouring technique continued to spread and came into contact with the gold qi. Like a god sword, it pierced the core of the black hole devouring technique. The black hole devouring technique could not digest the gold qi. Lin Zhen seemed to have a sun in his body. Golden light shot out from all directions. His blood flew out along with the gold qi, turning him into a bloody man. Originally, some people still wanted to join the battle to save the hedgehog, but seeing this situation, they ran as far away as they could. From the looks of it, this battle seemed to be a mutual destruction. Lin Zhen's self-destruction seemed to be irreversible. Everyone was watching from afar. Once Lin Zhen self-destructed, they would go over and snatch the spoils. Lin Zhen was simply a moving treasure trove. No, it's not over yet. Lin Zhen knew that today's matter was not going to be easy. The gold qi's energy was vast. It was comparable to a star system. If he could digest this energy, Lin Zhen's cultivation would rise sharply. But to digest it was not so easy. Gold was the sharpest thing. If Lin Zhen wanted to melt it, he only had one last hope. That was the universe's origin that he obtained when he broke through to the God realm. The universe's origin power that belongs to me, appear. Lin Zhen roared. The universe's origin power that had merged with his limbs and bones finally burst out at this moment. When the huge gold chi that seemed to be able to destroy the world encountered the universe's origin power, its violent agitation actually quieted down. No matter how strong the gold chi was, it was still one of the universe's energies. When it encountered the universe's origin power, it still had to calm down. It was just that the amount of gold chi was too large. It was so large that the universe's origin power could not completely suppress it. At this time, it was time to manifest a warrior's will. Lin Jin, who was enduring the pain of thousands of arrows piercing his heart every second, would die if he could not bear it and collapsed. Chapter 1179. Lin Jin's strange phenomenon attracted the attention of the people below. At first, the people in the dimensional arena hid far away, afraid that Lin Jin's explosion would affect them. However, after running out for a while, they noticed that the frequency of the golden aura bursting outwards had decreased. This devil-masked man, Lin Jin, was actually able to endure the pain of billions of golden aura piercing through his body, and even suppress it. This discovery completely stunned them. They didn't want to see such a scene. The devil-masked man, the black hole beast, and Lin Jin. This person had swallowed the hedgehog alive, and now he could even suppress the golden aura that was as vast as a galaxy. If he were to successfully survive this calamity, they wouldn't be able to survive. Kill him. They had to kill him. Osto roared, "Brothers, let's take advantage of this opportunity to kill him." The people in the dimensional arena immediately swarmed forward, heading straight for Lin Jin, who was still resisting the golden aura in the sky. Lin Jin was bitterly suppressing the golden aura and trying to absorb and refine it when he saw the people from the dimensional arena approaching. At this point, Lin Jin no longer had the ability to fight with these people. The only thing he could do was to seal himself away. In the Sea of Constellations and the Mirror Lake continent, it was almost impossible to seal oneself away, because no one could use spatial energy. However, Lin Jin could. After absorbing Suzanne's memories, Lin Jin could construct a realm. The so-called realm construct was to create an independent space that was incompatible with the space itself. With a thought, Lin Jin instantly formed an independent space within 100 meters of him. The spatial energy vibrated, and a layer of dark yellow light shone down. Lin Jin's position instantly became illusory. He could be seen, but not touched. The martial artists from the dimensional arena charged over, but it was as if they had entered a chaotic space. They could clearly see Lin Jin, but they couldn't reach him no matter what. Suzanne's realm construct could envelop a person. It was for battle, but it also had a hallucinatory effect. Those inside could use their strength to break it, but those outside couldn't enter. If you want to enter, you have to be able to use the power of space here. These people didn't believe in heresy and launched a series of attacks at the small space, but to no avail. The opponent isn't even in the space you're in, so how are you going to attack? He tried again and failed again and again. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of attacks swept past this place, but they were all like clay oxen entering the sea, never to return. Damn it! How can this guy use the space laws? How are we supposed to fight? I can't hit him at all. Did Sir Hedgehog die for nothing? Help, help! Everyone, gather all the friends you can find. There's strength in numbers. I don't believe that we can't do anything to this devil-masked man. That's right. Let's all mobilize and look for people. It would be best if we could find a quasi-god king. Ordinary people might not be able to do anything. The 40-plus high gods of the Dimensional Colosseum began to use their connections, calling their friends to hurry over. Some even posted posts in the dimensional universe, requesting people to come and kill the masked man. A regional video was uploaded and everyone who entered the Mirror Lake continent could see it. The news of the devil-masked man killing Hedgehog and being trapped in the sandy beach area spread. And some of the more observant people saw it and their eyes lit up. What? The Dimensional Colosseum is requesting help. Requesting experts to head to the sandy beach area to kill the devil-masked man. When Jiang Chao of the Heaven's Secret Alliance saw this news, he was instantly moved. He also knew about the devil-masked man's return. Back then, he was one of the 6 people who attacked the devil-masked man at the Scarlet Flame volcano. He was worried that the devil-masked man would come knocking on his door one day. He didn't expect that the devil-masked man would be trapped in the sandy beach area. He couldn't just sit by and watch. Killing the devil-masked man was also to protect himself. Moreover, the devil-masked man had many treasures on him. Just the mysterious yellow pagoda and the sun ring were enough to make people fight for it. Brothers, follow me. Let's head to the sandy beach area to take care of the devil-masked man. 2 shield god warships rose into the air and flew over from the other side of the Mirror Lake. Feeney of the Northern Regions Alliance was also the person who had obtained the moon ring of the sun, moon and star rings. Although it wasn't bad to have the moon ring in his hand, the sun ring was what he wanted more. It was just that the sun ring was in the devil-masked man's hands. He thought that he wouldn't have the chance to get it. However, he didn't expect that such a rare opportunity would appear. Moreover, Lin Zhen had killed the people of the Northern Regions Alliance multiple times. He could go there in the name of revenge. He immediately brought along one of the Northern Regions Alliance's free satellite. Feeney also moved out. Other than them, there were also some people from the 8 Great Hammers, Green Tiger Gang and Sakura Alliance. They all rushed to the sandy beach area. There were also some people who wanted Lin Zhen's life more than anyone else. These people could be considered as Lin Zhen's fellow apprentices. They were like Lin Zhen, the pre-selected disciples of Lonely Star Fishing Old Man. Ever since Iagus released the news about the ruler's Imperial Jade Seal, everyone wanted to gather all 9 rulers' Imperial Jade Seals. But how could they gather all 9? For those who were weak, forget about gathering all 9, they would be burning incense every day if they didn't want their Imperial Jade Seals to be snatched away by powerhouses like Andamandes or Green. The only chance to gather all 9 was to get Lin Zhen's 8 Imperial Jade Seals. And now the opportunity had finally appeared. Lin Zhen was fighting with some of the forces in the Mirror Lake and was in a desperate situation. As long as they could break through that strange space and get the 8 Imperial Jade Seals, they would be able to obtain the best equipment and armor. No one would give up on this opportunity. Including Andamandes, almost all the surviving disciples of Lonely Star Fishing Old Man rushed to the Mirror Lake area. However, Andamandes came openly, while the others came quietly, waiting for an opportunity to act. There were also some quasi-divine king-level experts who knew that Hedgehog had fallen in Lin Zhen's hands. They all felt that this was an opportunity. No one was in the mood to avenge Hedgehog, but the treasures on Lin Zhen's body were still very attractive. The 18 godly swords Jackdaw, the mysterious yellow pagoda that could block energy attacks, and the solar ring that could increase the power of mental attack. Every item attracted everyone's attention. It could be said that if it weren't for these treasures, Lin Zhen would have been killed by Hedgehog. It could be seen how powerful these treasures were. This was a moving treasure trove. It was much more practical than a treasure hunt. A man's wealth was his own ruin. Lin Zhen had so many treasures. That was a crime. In the depths of the Mirror Lake, shield god ships and free satellites were activated and headed to the sandy beach area. Chapter 1180. The people in the dimensional arena did not expect things to turn out this way. Originally, they asked everyone to contact their friends, but it caused a commotion in the entire Mirror Lake mainland. Looking at the increasing number of people in the sandy beach district, they knew that things were completely out of their control. When the land reclamation was first opened, there were about 50 to 60,000 people who entered the Mirror Lake mainland. In the past 17 to 18 years, some people left, some people died, but that was only a small portion. Now, there were still about 40,000 people in the Mirror Lake mainland. Now, there were close to 10,000 people in the Sandy Beach district, which was almost a quarter of the total population. When the various gangs and forces arrived and saw the situation, they would gather together spontaneously to prevent accidental injuries from occurring due to the fight for the treasure. There were about a dozen factions here, and 6 of them had a grudge against Lin Jun. In every gang, there would be a few leaders who would temporarily gather together and be elected as the temporary leader. Otherwise, it would be a complete mess. Feeney of the Northern Regions Alliance, Osto of the Dimensional Arena, Jiang Chao of the Heavenly Imperial Alliance, Anro of the Sakura Alliance, DeLove of the 8 Great Hammers, Baby Spirit of the Green Tiger Gang, Lanka of the Galactic Beast Alliance, and so on. Lanka was the man that Lin Jun, Suzanne and the others met in the bar. He was a very strong warrior. These people were all peak high god. Although they did not dare to say that they were at the level of a quasi-god king, they were still outstanding among the high gods. When everyone arrived, the first thing they did was to look at Lin Jun, who was in the air. Lin Jun had already taken off his ghost face mask and was fighting against the gold energy in the structured space. He was like a shining sun, but also like a sea urchin. The gold energy around his body was constantly expanding and erupting, but he was constantly suppressing it. It looked like he could die at any time, but he could not die. Around him, people were constantly trying to fly up and launch their most powerful attacks at this space. The ultimate techniques of saber, spear, and swordsmanship, as well as the constant spiritual attacks and various energy elements, were constantly exploding in this space. Rumbling sounds of explosions and flying chi could be heard incessantly, but none of the attacks seemed to be able to affect Lin Jun in the slightest. DeLove of the 8 Great Hammers made his move. DeLove was an elder of the 8 Great Hammers. He had inherited the tradition of the 8 Great Hammers. He held a pair of huge hammers in his hands. Among the people present, his strength could be ranked in the top 3. A pair of giant hammers were raised, and with the power to shatter stars, they smashed towards the space where Lin Jun was. The surrounding air seemed to have been sucked dry by this attack, instantly turning into a vacuum. This attack could even penetrate a star. The people below looked at DeLove with anticipation. If DeLove succeeded, they would rush up and kill him for the treasure. Even the people who were thousands of meters away were thrown to the ground by this attack. But after the hammer wind passed, the space remained the same. Everyone was a little depressed, and the chaotic attacks gradually stopped. Northern Region Alliance's Feeney said, "Everyone, save your energy. This devil-masked man Lin Jun isn't even in the space we're in. Even if we exhaust ourselves to the point of vomiting blood, he won't hurt a single strand of hair in the alternate dimension." Jiang Chao of the Heavenly Imperial Alliance clapped his hands angrily. "Are we just going to watch him be arrogant here?" DeLove, who had just failed, also felt very embarrassed. He looked at Runka. "Runka, Lin Jun is a member of your Galactic Beast Alliance. You should know something about him, right?" Lan Ka's face was a little unhappy. "Lin Jun and I have only met once. We haven't even spoken to each other. Besides, we are of the same race. I didn't come here to kill him. I can't interfere with how you deal with him, but I won't participate either." Anro of the Sakura Alliance snorted. "We were not counting on you. But if Lin Jun's space is broken, you better stay away from him to avoid being attacked by us." Runka spread his hands and stepped back, indicating the Galactic Beast Alliance's attitude. It was not that he did not want to save Lin Jun, but he could not under such circumstances. "Everyone, it seems that our attacks are not strong enough. I think we need a quasi-divine king to have any hope," said the baby spirit of the Green Tiger Gang. "A quasi-divine king is more or less the same. It's a pity that a quasi-divine king is not here yet." "Who said that? Isn't he here?" Finley pointed, and everyone turned around to see a gigantic free satellite on the surface of Mirror Lake, cleaving through the waves as it approached. "It's the Tree Demon King." The owner of this free satellite was also very famous. Not only was he a quasi-divine king expert, but he was also a plant life. His true form was a huge tree that reached into the sky. He was born with a natural understanding of the wood elemental precept. Such special life forms were very talented and were born stronger than others. However, this kind of talent usually reached the limit of a quasi-divine king. The free satellite arrived, and the tree demon king walked down from it. This was a huge man who was more than 3 meters tall. He had long green hair that looked like dense leaves on his head. As he strode down, the others took a step back to show their respect for the tree demon king. "What, you guys still can't break this kid's space barrier? Our juniors are incompetent. It's indeed difficult. Move aside. Let me try." The tree demon king arrived below the space where Lin Zhen was. First, he extended a withered arm that looked like a huge tree branch and swung it at the sky. The tree branch passed through the space where Lin Zhen was. It pierced through the air but did not touch anything. "You do have some skills. Let's try this." Hundreds of arms suddenly appeared behind the tree demon king. Each arm was a huge tree branch that looked like countless long swords. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they attacked again. Dust flew and air currents rolled, but the result was the same. The tree demon king's expression turned ugly. What a powerful spatial precept! It actually hid in another dimension. Let's see if it can block my strongest attack. He raised his hands and a seed appeared in his palms. He directly dropped it on the ground where Lin Zhen was. The seed automatically burrowed into the soil. The tree demon king once again shot out a green radiance. This was a very strong vitality. The radiance entered the soil and the seed quickly grew. Like a bamboo shoot at night, it grew at an extremely high speed. It twisted and soared into the sky. Its tip had a bit of green radiance that pierced through space. This was the essence of the wood elemental precept. It had the ability to break through powerful obstacles. Even the alloy-free satellite armor could not block a single stab from the tree branch. Chapter 1181. After the failure of the branch, the demon tree king was at his wits' end. He didn't expect that his best ability couldn't break open this space. This was a bit embarrassing. His face turned green as he said embarrassedly, "I'm afraid there's no way to forcefully break open this space. Unless one is proficient in the law of space, even a true godly monarch would find it difficult. Let me try." At this moment another person flew over. This person was tall and straight, and his face was chiseled like a marble statue. However, not many people present recognized him. However, this didn't stop him from being powerful. He gave off a strong oppressive feeling when he arrived. It was close to the might of a godly monarch. Quasi-godly monarchs like Hedgehog were said to be invincible below the godly monarch level. However, in the eyes of others, he might not be a match for this person. "Who are you?" "I'm Andamandes." The person didn't say anything else after that. Instead, he came to the space where Lin Zhen was, took out the sword in his hand, and formed a hand seal. Great Vajra Wheel Seal. This was the ultimate move taught by Lone Star Fishing Old Man, the second move of the 9 superposition seal technique. It could double the lethality. Aegus thought that only Lin Zhen had learned the second move, which shocked him greatly. However, he didn't expect that Lin Zhen wasn't the only one who had learned the second move. Anda was also one of them. "Lin Zhen, it's up to you now." Anda's sword trembled as he stabbed out. The moment he attacked, the surrounding people all held their breath. This sword was simply shocking. It was even stronger than the Demon Tree King's life branch. The ear-piercing shriek pierced everyone's eardrums, causing them to feel dizzy. The power of this sword had already exceeded the limits of their imagination. Everyone present had a feeling that they could not fight against this sword. Even if it was a god king, an ordinary attack would probably be at this level. However, such a sword actually stabbed empty air. Wherever the sword chi passed, a volcano in the distance collapsed. However, the space remained unscathed. Lin Zhen was still fighting against the metal chi. Andamandes' sword pierced through the air, and he immediately retreated. The others don't need to try anymore. This kind of spatial technique cannot be forcefully broken. Even I can't do it. Those below the Divine King level don't need to try anymore. These few words expressed his attitude, and also verified everyone's guesses. This was another half-divine king. It was just that he did not know where this quasi-god king came from. After unleashing that stab, Anda flew off into the distance, cultivating on a distant mountain peak. After 2 consecutive quasi-god kings failed, the people present finally stopped those useless attacks. Don't tell me we don't have a way to break Lin Zhen's spatial technique? If Lin Zhen completes the suppression of the gold qi, I'm afraid he will immediately escape. There's no better way now. In any case, I'm going to wait here. Lin Zhen will come out sooner or later. The Mirror Lake continent will enter the volcanic eruption period again in 30 years. At that time, everyone will have to leave. I don't believe Lin Zhen won't come out by then. The 8 Great Hammers de Love expressed his attitude. Me too. I'll wait here. I feel that whether Lin Zhen suppresses the gold qi or is killed by it, there will be a result in the near future. The only thing worth worrying about is that Lin Zhen might escape after coming out. The Green Tiger Gang's baby spirit also expressed his thoughts. After arriving, the Demon Tree King had been very unruly, but after seeing Anda appear, his arrogance was cut in half. He felt that it would be difficult for him to obtain Lin Zhen's treasures by himself. After hearing these people's words, the Demon Tree King said, "How about this? I'll place down the Moon Elf Tree and form a natural giant tree barrier around this space. This way, even if Lin Zhen comes out, he won't be able to escape from my Moon Elf Tree for a while. Everyone can easily kill him." "That's great. Thank you for your trouble, Senior Demon Tree King." Everyone was delighted. The Demon Tree King waved his hand. "Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. The Moon Elf Tree will most likely experience a battle, and my losses will not be small. After killing Lin Zhen, I want to choose one of his treasures. You guys can discuss it." Everyone was a bit troubled. Lin Zhen had 3 main treasures: Jackdaw, Mysterious Yellow Pagoda, and Sun Ring. If the Demon Tree King wanted one, then the others would have less. But if they didn't agree with the Demon Tree King's suggestion, they probably wouldn't get anything. In the end, it was Deloff from the Dimensional Arena who spoke up. "If that's the case, you can't choose the Mysterious Yellow Pagoda. Or you can split the Mysterious Yellow Pagoda in half. That way we can consider." The Demon Tree King nodded. "All right." Everyone finally reached a temporary agreement and formed a temporary distribution plan. In fact, this could be considered an alliance. Their goal was to resist Andamandes, who had suddenly appeared. This guy gave off too much pressure. These people represented the majority of the people present. At the very least, no one from the various alliances stood up to oppose this. Even if there were a few lone wolves hiding in the shadows, they wouldn't be able to affect anything. The Demon Tree King took action again, planting a new seed. In a short time, it grew into a giant tree that was comparable to a mountain. The tree covered the sky and the sun, completely enveloping the space Lin Zhen was in. This way, even if Lin Zhen left the space, he would fall into the Moon Elf Tree's encirclement. As for the others, they all brought their subordinates and chose good positions on the branches in all directions. Once Lin Zhen appeared, everyone could surround and kill him at any time. When some lone wolves arrived and saw such a situation, they immediately retreated. Lin Zhen looked like a turtle in a jar, unable to escape at all. Even if they went over, they wouldn't get anything and might even lose their lives. Since that was the case, they might as well continue searching for treasures. Of course, there were some lone wolves who didn't give up and quietly lurked in the surroundings, waiting for an opportunity to come. This included Lonely Star Fishing Elder's disciples who came with Lin Zhen. After these people arrived and saw Andamandes, they immediately hid. Although Andamandes had shown great strength, they had no way to retreat. If they didn't get Lin Zhen's ruler's jade seal today, it would be taken away by others in the future. Rather than that, they might as well go all out. On top of the giant tree, There were thousands of people in the light and in the dark. There were no lower gods here at all. The weakest were mid-gods. Most of them were upper gods. There were late and peak god-kings. Apart from god-kings, all of them were here. Now, everyone was patiently waiting for Lin Zhen to finish his battle with the metal chi. Without seeing the result, no one would leave. Chapter 1182. Lin Zhen had no time to pay attention to the chaos happening in the outside world. After activating the construct boundary, he could only focus on dealing with the invasion of the metal chi. Streaks of metal chi were like steel knives and iron needles that wandered all over Lin Zhen's body. However, what corresponded to the metal chi was a wisp of cosmic origin that wandered all over the place, calming down the rampaging metal chi. Lin Zhen gritted his teeth and held on for a while. He knew that this couldn't go on forever. This wisp of cosmic origin isn't endless. It will weaken as it continues to calm down the metal chi. The only way I can do this is to grasp the true essence of metal in the shortest time possible. Only by grasping the true essence of metal can I truly use this metal chi without causing any harm. This is my only chance to survive. Lin Zhen had grasped the power of water, thunder and light. These three elemental powers were relatively difficult to grasp, but the power of metal wasn't as easy to grasp either. If thunder was the most violent, then metal was the most dangerous. Even the majority of weapons were metal in nature. The most direct way to cause damage to an enemy wasn't water, fire, light or thunder, but metal. Back on Earth, Lin Zhen had once comprehended the power of metal and could even emit rays of metal chi. Later on, the metal supplementation technique had followed Lin Zhen and made great contributions during his battles. However, what he had grasped was only the surface of metal. In theory, if one grasped the true essence of metal, then pure metal wouldn't be able to cause any harm to them. In fact, most metals weren't just made of metal, but also made of many other strange stones and wood. Therefore, even if one completely grasped the true essence of metal, they still couldn't completely resist external damage. Therefore, there were fewer people who cultivated the metal attribute than there were people who cultivated the thunder attribute. It was the most difficult thing for ordinary people to grasp the metal attribute, because metal chi could cause fatal damage to a cultivator at any time. After all, people who were born with the metal attribute like a hedgehog were extremely rare. It wasn't difficult to grasp the metal attribute. For example, Lin Zhen had previously comprehended the metal attribute. The most important hurdle was to overcome the fear of metal in one's heart. Only then would one be able to grasp it. This matter sounded very simple, but when it was really done, almost no one could do it. The so-called overcoming of fear was to use gold chi to temper one's two Cs. Dantian chi Si. Spiritual Si. The process of training was to have the metal chi penetrate the two Cs, inside and out. As long as one did not fear the metal chi during this process, and was in a state of meditation, one would be able to comprehend it. But how could he not fear Jin? For most people, seeing a needle about to pierce their blood vessels, they couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts. It was just that the more timid people might cry, while the more courageous people would be able to keep a straight face. However, the fear in one's heart would more or less exist. As long as one was still a human, a living being of flesh and blood. Perhaps those stone lifeforms wouldn't be afraid. People who didn't have pain nerves wouldn't be afraid. Unfortunately, such people were born with limited comprehension and would never be able to grasp the true essence of metal. Even if one was a martialist or a god, their thinking was still from the perspective of a living being of flesh and blood. It was impossible for them not to fear Jin. Some people dared to say that they would let the metal chi penetrate their bodies, but they definitely wouldn't dare to let the metal chi penetrate their two Cs. This was because they wouldn't die if their bodies were destroyed. However, if their Dantian chi Si was destroyed, they would lose their divine power. If their spiritual Si was destroyed, they would lose their spiritual power. This was equivalent to the end of the martialist. Almost no one dared to try it. Throughout the history of the universe, there had been many courageous martialists who thought they had no fear in their hearts who had tried to cultivate gold chi. However, in the end, out of 10,000 people, 9,999 would fall. They thought that they were already useless, but when it came to real cultivation, as long as there was a trace of fear in their hearts, they wouldn't succeed. This trace of fear might not even be noticed by the person themselves. Most of the people who succeeded were either gifted or lucky. There were too few people who could overcome the gold chi. And now Lin Jun had no choice. He could only give it a try. Lin Jun could easily endure the pain on his body. He wasn't afraid of the pain of being penetrated by the metal chi. Lin Jun tried to cultivate. However, Lin Jun didn't dare to let the metal chi enter his 2Cs. If he failed, the consequences would be unbearable. Before he reached the peak, Lin Jun didn't want to become a cripple. The first thing he did was to let the metal chi penetrate his palm. The metal chi didn't pass through on its own. Instead, Lin Jun forcefully controlled a wisp of metal chi to pierce his palm. The metal chi was as sharp as a needle. It pierced through his skin and flesh. Blood flowed out, but the wound healed. During this process, Lin Jun frowned slightly. So, I have fear in my heart too. The moment the metal chi was about to enter my body, my muscles instinctively contracted. If it weren't for my sensitive senses, I wouldn't have noticed this contraction. Don't underestimate this little contraction. This is a sign of fear, although it's almost undetectable. Lin Jun didn't care about the metal chi penetrating his body. He closed his eyes slightly. This won't do. If I'm afraid of the pain of having the metal chi penetrate my palm, how can I talk about my mind penetrating my 2Cs? Lin Jun, oh Lin Jun, if you don't have this ability, then this will be your burial ground today. I'm not afraid of pain at all. This metal chi is nothing. Lin Jun opened his eyes abruptly. He grabbed a beam of metal chi with one hand and stabbed it into his palm again. Puff! The metal chi penetrated his palm. Lin Jun's muscles didn't move at all. It's done. Lin Jun exhaled slowly. In that instant, he wasn't afraid at all. He decisively pierced his palm, completing the first step. If I'm not afraid of piercing my palm, then my limbs and muscles won't be afraid. But what if it's my organs? Lin Jun wanted to try the second step, which was to let the metal chi penetrate his heart. The heart was different from the palm. Some ruthless people would even dare to stab their palms or thighs with a knife in a fierce battle. However, very few people would dare to stab their own hearts with a knife. That wasn't a fierce battle, but suicide. Lin Jun's second step was to stab his own heart. With his near-immortal body, he wouldn't die even if his heart was turned to ashes. However, the fear buried deep in his bones couldn't be completely erased. Lin Jun raised his hand, grabbed the metal chi, and stabbed it into his heart. The metal chi penetrated his body. Chapter 1183. Lin Jun was not satisfied with this result. He had already overcome the fear of piercing his palms, so why did he have to be afraid of piercing his heart? Lin Jun even despised himself at this moment. Lin Jun, trash. What are you afraid of? Is it human nature that makes you afraid? You're not worried about piercing your palms, but you're worried about piercing your heart. You won't die, so what are you afraid of? If you're still afraid, then just kill yourself. A cold expression appeared on Lin Jun's face. He grabbed another handful of metal chi and stabbed it into his chest. At this moment, he understood that his fear was instinctive and came from his human nature. He was afraid because he had never tried piercing his own heart before. Just as he thought, piercing his palms and heart would result in the same result. What was there to be afraid of? The metal chi pierced his heart. This time, there was no increase in his heartbeat or blood circulation. The metal chi passed easily. Lin Jun spat out a mouthful of turbid air. He knew that he had passed the second test he had set up. No matter the body, no matter the internal organs, could he try piercing his palms now? Lin Jun denied himself in his heart. He wanted to try one more time, and that was to pierce his own eyes. Would there be any fear when he pierced his eyes with the metal chi? Lin Jun did not dare to say. In his previous life on Earth, he had watched many movies from the Christian era because he had neglected his cultivation. In those movies, there were scenes of needles piercing one's eyes. It was a terrifying scene. The eyes were the windows to one's soul. The fear of seeing a needle piercing one's heart would cause one to collapse. However, this time, Lin Jun did not hesitate. He grabbed the metal chi and deliberately pierced it slowly. What's the difference between piercing my eyes and piercing my heart? I won't die because of this. Blindness is nothing more than a small pain. Even if I fall asleep, it won't wake me up. He pierced it and pulled it out. The third test was a success. Lin Jun felt his mind clear. He had finally passed his test. He could probably try piercing his palms again. This was a dangerous process. If he succeeded, he would comprehend the metal element. If he failed, then there would be no more. The first thing Lin Jun wanted to test was his Dantian Chi Si. Before starting the experiment, Lin Jun glanced down. The beach below was already densely packed with people. Lin Jun even saw a huge muscular man attacking his space with a wood attribute branch, but to no avail. The power of the universe's origin in his body was gradually weakening as it suppressed the gold aura. This proved that he did not have much time left. If he couldn't comprehend the true essence of metal before the power of the universe's origin disappeared, Lin Jun's journey of rebirth would probably come to an end. Feeling that his condition was about right, Lin Jun grabbed a handful of metal chi that was flying around his body and aimed it at his Dantian Chi Si. It wasn't just piercing through his body, it was piercing through the God world and into his sea of chi. If anything went wrong, he would be crippled. No matter how many times Lin Jun's body was attacked, it couldn't shake his heart that was as hard as stone. However, his Dantian Chi Si was different. When the palm of metal chi approached his Dantian Chi Si, Lin Jun even felt the palm of his hand hesitate. How can this be? It's just piercing into my Dantian Chi Si. Why would I feel afraid? Although Lin Jun kept encouraging himself in his heart, the fear couldn't be erased. He tried a few times and failed a few times. He didn't even dare to let the metal chi enter his body. The fear in his heart couldn't be overcome just because he wanted to. The words of comfort from before were completely ineffective. I understand. I pierced my palm, my heart, and my eyes because I knew that even if I failed, there wouldn't be any consequences. Although these parts are important to ordinary people, they are no longer important to gods. If I can even give up on my body, why should I be afraid of these things? But the Dantian Chi Si is different. It can't be broken. Once it's broken, it can't be gathered back. His palms gradually became sweaty. After Lin Jun's rebirth, this was the first time he felt like this. At this moment, his heart was in turmoil. Scenes after his rebirth appeared in his mind. What should I do? I don't dare to take the risk of losing my divine power and spiritual power. As long as I have these scruples, I can't do anything. I don't even dare to experiment. If I try, I'll die. Because I'm afraid, I don't dare to try. The more I don't dare to try, the more I'm afraid. This is simply an endless cycle. At this time, the lush trees outside rose into the sky, forming a huge array outside the space Lin Jun was in. Countless powerhouses surrounded him, waiting for the moment when Lin Jun couldn't maintain the space or suppress the metal chi. Looking at the eyes of these people, Lin Jun felt like he was in the wilderness, in the grasslands. These people were like a pack of wolves, like vultures, ready to devour his flesh at any time. Just as Lin Jun didn't know what to do and was getting more and more anxious, a voice faintly sounded in his mind. Lin Jun, what are you afraid of? Ah, it's you. This voice appeared in Lin Jun's mind for the third time. On the star of God's punishment in the primordial realm, and now here. You're afraid of the metal chi. You're afraid of losing your power. You're hesitating and hesitating. These are all your inner demons, stumbling blocks that block your path forward. They are enemies that you must get rid of. I understand, but this thing is very difficult to overcome. Lin Zhen was a little ashamed. If you want to overcome the feelings in your heart, you have to start from the heart. Lin Zhen, don't forget where you came from. After saying this, the voice gradually drifted away and dissipated. No matter how Lin Zhen called, there was no response. What is this senior trying to tell me? Where did I come from? Lin Zhen fell into deep thought. That's right. Lin Zhen thought for a while, and suddenly his eyes lit up. I was reborn. I shouldn't have appeared here. The power in the unseen world gave me a second life. Everything I have now was earned. Even if I turn into ashes and die now, I've earned it. It's worth it. If that's the case, what is there that I can't accept and let go of? Lin Zhen sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes. His heart was empty. He held 2 long golden needles with both hands. One entered his Dantian's sea of qi, and the other entered his sea of consciousness. The needles passed and he was fine. When Lin Zhen opened his eyes again, the sharpness in his eyes rose to the sky. They were like the fiery eyes of gold. Ha! Lin Zhen suddenly opened his mouth, and the divine power in his body surged. His body, which had been ravaged all this time, opened up completely. Every pore in his limbs and bones opened up. The metal qi, which had been compressed within a few hundred meters and was as dense as neutrons and as dense as a galaxy, seemed to have found a vent in an instant. It went straight into Lin Zhen's body. This huge amount of energy was so vast that it surged into Lin Zhen's Dantian's Sea of Qi. Chapter 1184. All the gods in the moon elf tree raised their heads with their mouths wide open. They looked at the person in the center, Lin Zhen. What happened to this guy? Not good. He has comprehended the true essence of metal. The demonic tree king was the first to let out a roar. He clenched his fists tightly, but he was helpless against Lin Zhen, who was in the space. Everyone felt their hearts tighten. The devil-masked man had actually comprehended it. The true essence of metal was extremely difficult to comprehend. How could Lin Zhen comprehend it so quickly? Moreover, it wasn't as simple as comprehending it. He was even about to make a breakthrough. This guy, so what if you have made a breakthrough? There are 3,000 people in the moon elf tree. Every one of them is at least a late-stage high god. Most of them are peak high gods, and there are even quasi-god kings. Once you appear, you will be the target of their attacks. These people weren't afraid. Instead, they were looking forward to it. Lin Zhen was finally coming out. Their wait was about to end. Lin Zhen never thought that the energy this time would be so violent. The amount of metal energy accumulated by the hedgehog over 1 billion years was simply incalculable. Lin Zhen originally thought that after advancing to mid-god, he would need at least 50 years, or even 100 or 200 years before he would have the opportunity to advance to mid-stage mid-god. He definitely didn't think that the mid-stage would come so quickly. This energy, which was even greater than the solar system, had pushed his realm from early stage to mid-stage in less than a minute. Ah! Lin Zhen couldn't help but let out a roar. His long hair was pulled by the wind and fluttered in the air like flames. His clothes had completely swelled up. His skin was red and his eyeballs were bulging out. This was because the energy in his body was too great. It was impossible to not digest this energy. Lin Zhen was just a human, an astral river beast. If he wanted to digest this energy, he could only make a breakthrough in his realm. It was like a bottle of water. The bigger the container, the more water it could hold. From early stage to mid-stage, Lin Zhen's appearance, which looked like his blood vessels would burst at any time, seemed to have decreased a little. However, it was only a little. If one didn't pay close attention, one wouldn't be able to tell the difference. This proved that the impact of this energy was far from over. From early stage to mid-stage mid-god, Lin Zhen's 1,510,000 divine energy points soared by 200,000, reaching 1,710,000. The clone's divine power was also increasing by 70,000. However, Lin Zhen didn't have the time to pay attention to these people. He was in a hurry to clear his meridians and ensure that his body was in perfect condition. He wanted to make sure that he could maximize the use of this energy. He knew that such an opportunity was extremely rare. To be able to comprehend the true essence of metal when the metal chi was at its peak, and to be able to do so after 1 billion years of accumulation. In the entire history of the universe, this was an unprecedented event that could not be replicated. Within his sea of energy, balls of golden light danced about, causing his god world to expand once more. The tide-like gold chi was still crashing against his next barrier. The barrier between mid-stage mid-gods and late-stage mid-gods. The energy required to go from mid-stage to late-stage mid-gods was at least 3 times that of early-stage to mid-stage mid-gods. However, such a barrier still couldn't stop the onslaught of the gold chi. Every pore on his body opened up, and the dense gold chi in the surroundings rapidly poured in as though it had found an entrance, allowing him to make another breakthrough. With a rumble, he opened the next barrier. Late-stage mid-god. His divine power soared by another 200,000, reaching 1,900,000. The clone's divine power had also reached 590,000. After breaking through 2 barriers in succession, nearly half of the gold chi had been consumed. However, the remaining gold chi was still enormous, and it was still pouring in endlessly. Lin Zhen was going to go all the way. Since he had already reached this point, there was no need to hold back. First, he would raise his realm. As for stabilizing his realm, that was a matter for the future. 1,000 rivers flowed into the sea, but who knew that Mount Tai was originally a speck of dust? When the tiny strands of gold chi reached an almost infinite number, a qualitative change finally occurred. It actually allowed an early-stage mid-god to break through to the peak of mid-god. When the 3rd barrier was opened, Lin Zhen's divine power broke through again, reaching 2,110,000. The clone's divine power increased by another 50,000, reaching 660,000. When the last breath of gold chi was sucked in by Lin Zhen, this crazy journey of improvement finally calmed down. His skin shone with a faint bronze color. Lin Zhen twisted his body. Ka ka ka. The sound of metal rubbing against each other could be heard. He slowly raised his palm. This body that had been tortured had become so strong that it was unimaginable. He took out the star soul spear that lonely star-fishing old man had given him and pierced his palm. The tip of the star soul spear let out a mournful cry, completely unable to leave a mark on Lin Zhen's palm. Equipment, it's actually close to middle-grade equipment. Lin Zhen suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. Ha ha! I really didn't expect this to be a blessing in disguise. I can look forward to the great Tao. His gaze swept across the people waiting outside. Because of the spatial barrier, they could only vaguely see the situation of Lin Zhen's breakthrough. They couldn't sense any changes in Lin Zhen at all, so they were still guarding there, waiting for Lin Zhen to come out. Lin Zhen's lips curled up in a smile. Divine power fusion. A lightning doppelganger, light clone, in Lin Zhen's god world, flashed at the same time and fused with his main body. His main body's divine power was 2,110,000. Adding on the divine power of the 2 clones, Lin Zhen's divine power instantly soared to 3,430,000. God domain activated. With an 80% increase, Lin Zhen's divine power reached 6,170,000. It had to be known that when Lin Zhen fought the quasi-god King Hedgehog, Hedgehog's divine power had barely reached 6 million. It couldn't even compare to Lin Zhen's current divine power. Lin Zhen was even certain that if he and Hedgehog were to fight again, Lin Zhen would definitely be able to kill Hedgehog a few hundred times over. With a clang, Lin Jin unsheathed his jackdaw godly sword. He raised a hand, and a hazy golden light covered Jackdaw. This was Lin Jin's newest gold enhancement. It could even upgrade high-grade equipment. Jackdaw was already high-grade to begin with, but now it was infinitely close to becoming a top-grade equipment. Strands of sword energy sprayed out. This was the metal energy Lin Jin was unable to suppress within his body. He had just broken through to the peak of mid-god, and his realm was still unstable. But Lin Jin could no longer suppress it. With this violent metal energy pouring into him, he felt like he had to vent it out. If he didn't vent, he would definitely be forced into depression. With a thought, the space around him dispersed. Fresh air flowed in. Sunlight, green trees, as well as the countless surrounding people who were glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. Lin Jin's golden, lantern-like eyes swept the crowd, and then he said a few words calmly. "Have you paid a fee to watch me?" A high god who was about to attack was startled. "You're not a monkey. Do we have to pay a fee to watch you?" Chapter 1185. Before he even finished speaking, Lin Jin's jackdaw was already in his hand. However, the gods on the moon elf tree didn't take Lin Jin's words seriously. On the contrary, they were very excited. They had already waited for an entire day. Finally, Lin Jin appeared. These gods were like vultures pouncing on rotten meat. They appeared from all directions and quickly launched the first wave of attacks on Lin Jin. However, not everyone was convinced. Many could tell that Lin Jin's cultivation level had increased and that he was full of vigor. The first wave of attacks might not be able to achieve good result. Some people started to move, while others were still observing the situation. There were about 400 gods in the first wave. These people had never seen the devil-masked man's abilities before. They were all eager to get their hands on the treasure. Even if they had seen it before, they wouldn't care. Under these circumstances, the devil-masked man Lin Jin couldn't possibly fight back. The densely packed gods launched countless attacks. They rained down like a torrential rain. In an instant, the moon elf tree was like a goddess scattering flowers. Colorful energy flowers bloomed. Even a divine king would find it difficult to deal with such a concentrated attack. There was no space for him to dodge at all. There were long-range elemental attacks and close-range attacks. These gods had already made up their minds. They would kill Lin Jin in the first wave of attacks. Then, they would obtain the treasure based on their own abilities. Lin Jin lowered his body slightly in the face of these gods surging towards him. In my hometown, not paying is uncivilized behavior. It should be dealt with firmly. All of you will be killed without mercy. The attacks came crashing down. Lin Jin's figure distorted and then disappeared in the midst of the attacks. He teleported. What they hit was only his afterimage. Everyone spread out their spiritual power, forming a huge net that covered the sky. They wanted to find Lin Jin's traces. Above! Someone exclaimed. Everyone looked up and saw Lin Jin unleashing his sword in the air. Lin Jin attacked with his jackdaw sword for the first time since coming out of seclusion. Lin Jin wielded the sword with both hands. The gold-encrusted jackdaw in his hand brought out a clear sword light. It connected the heavens and the earth. Wherever the sword light passed, all obstacles were reduced to nothingness. It was like the light of dawn piercing through the darkness. A god's battle axe cleaved through the chaos. The branches, leaves, and trees were all cut open by this sword without any resistance. The array formation of the moon elf tree, which was 10,000 meters tall, was shattered by this sword strike. Under the sword light, more than 60 gods who bore the brunt of it were all enveloped. When they saw Lin Jin's sword, they tried their best to block it. But it was useless. 6 million units of divine power was not something that these gods, who had less than 400 units of divine power, could withstand. Crack! Branches and blood's blood, leaves, and brains were the same color. The sword light burst from the center of the tree trunk, and then the giant tree was split into two, falling to the ground with a loud crash. My moon elf tree! The Demon Tree King, who was watching the battle from behind, stomped his feet and pounded his chest. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The surrounding martial artists, who were still using the trees as cover or attacking, were like a flock of birds that had exploded into the air from all directions. They had already lost their place of shelter. Lin Jin's first strike after coming out of seclusion cleaved the god tree. Lin Jin swept his gaze across the area. Amidst the flying dust, the martial artists were gathering in waves like hornets. Lin Jin's body flickered as he teleported. He appeared in front of a god. The golden light in his eyes was so dazzling that the god retreated pathetically. Meanwhile, the people in the surroundings were making a big fuss as they came to besiege them. Lin Jin teleported again and appeared in another location. The god that was targeted knew that he was no match for him. He scrambled to escape, but he was chased by the crowd. Lin Jin teleported again and disappeared for the third time. Every time he appeared, there was a pattern. He teleported in a certain direction. The gods were led by Lin Jin to run all over the place. Gradually, to the east, there was a team of about 100 people chasing after Lin Jin. Just as they thought that Lin Jin would teleport again, Lin Jin suddenly stopped. The golden aura around him surged, and his sword aura flourished. He swung the jackdaw sword and turned around to slash. A dazzling golden light streaked across the sky, drawing a line thousands of miles in the air. 1. The line was cleaved with great precision. The 100 people chasing after him were all within the range of the line. The sword's dazzling light was so dazzling that it was impossible to see anything else within 1,000 miles. As the sword's light swept past, the 100 people were all killed. The jackdaw sword's cold aura froze their bodies. Then, they fell to the ground and shattered into ice shards. Behind the sword's light, there was a volcano in the distance. It was the place where Andamandes was sitting cross-legged and watching the show. The volcano was cut in half by the sword's light. The top half of the mountain was like a cucumber that had been sliced by a kitchen knife. It directly slid down from the top half. A mountain fell down. With a rumble, the volcano was originally circular. After being cut by the sword, it fell to the ground like a donut. Dust and debris rose into the air. Lin Jin's second sword, after coming out of seclusion, slashing the volcano. 2 shocking killing moves in a row didn't make these people cower. Instead, it aroused their ferocity. Although half of the 400 people in this wave had been killed, they were still charging towards Lin Jin. This time, Lin Jin didn't choose to teleport. Instead, he flew at a low altitude. Now that they were experienced, they no longer formed a dense line. They came from all directions, giving Lin Jin no chance to kill them all together. Lin Jin flew in the direction of Mirror Lake at the edge of the sandy beach. His body flew at a low altitude. The surface of Mirror Lake was right under his feet. The rumbling sounds behind him were like a dense cluster of missiles. The explosion caused the water to rise into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the 200 people all followed him above Mirror Lake. Lin Jin, who was fleeing at a high speed, suddenly braked. His body came to a halt, and with one hand, the palm of his hand was like a golden dragon sucking in water. He had already used gravity to suck up an extremely compressed water ball. Seeing the people chasing after him, Lin Jin fiercely threw out the water ball. At the same time, he fiercely attacked with his sword. With Lin Jin's current divine power, the density of this water ball was comparable to Bohai Bay. Under his attack, Mirror Lake's water exploded in the air with a loud boom. A huge wave came crashing down. Without teleporting, no one was able to escape the range of the water ball's explosion. Mirror Lake's water had a powerful corrosive power. These people were caught off guard and were drenched in it. Their bones and flesh were instantly separated, and they screamed miserably as they fell into the lake. Lin Jin's third sword, after coming out of seclusion, flowing split. Lin Jin slowly walked through a sea of golden light. The golden aura that filled the air turned the struggling gods into sieves. They no longer floated up from Mirror Lake. Looking at the 2,000 people on the shore, dumbfounded, Lin Zhen raised his jackdaw sword and pointed at the dead people. Chapter 1186. Lin Zhen's 3 sword strikes had stunned everyone, but it was not enough to make them cower. That was because Lin Zhen's overflowing metal energy had dissipated. The power of those sword strikes was mostly due to the metal energy hedgehog had accumulated over 1 billion years. Lin Zhen had only used his own strength to drive the metal energy to create such an effect. These people could see that. In fact, these 400 people were nothing more than cannon fodder, but now it seemed that cannon fodder had some use. The people who had been watching from afar moved. Apart from Lanka of the Galactic Beast Alliance, who did not move with some galactic beasts, all the other guilds had entered the arena. Hee, it's our turn. The legend of the devil-masked man will end today. Lin Zhen returned to the beach from the Mirror Lake, and the other side was ready. Previously there were 400 people, but this time, the number had more than quadrupled. In comparison, the previous wave was just an appetizer. This wave was the main force of the other side. DeLove, Baby Spirit, Feeny, Jiang Chao, Osto, Anro, and the others all entered the arena. DeLove even said to the Tree Demon King, "Senior, your moon elf tree was destroyed by him this time. When we take him down, you won't be able to get so many things." He said this in hopes that the Tree Demon King would join them. After all, Lin Zhen looked quite strong. If the Tree Demon King, a quasi-divine king, participated, their chances would be much higher. However, the Tree Demon King's face was gloomy, and he had no intention of immediately entering the arena. As a quasi-divine king expert, he felt that Lin Zhen would not be so easy to take down. Hedgehog had been killed before, so if he entered the arena now, he would definitely be targeted by Lin Zhen as the biggest threat. He did not want to follow in Hedgehog's footstep. The older one was, the more cowardly they became. This was probably what it meant. However, the Tree Demon King was also angry that Lin Zhen had destroyed his moon elf tree. This time, he did not plan to completely stand by and watch. You don't have to be so proud. Let me remind you that this kid can use teleportation. Don't look at how many of you have, you can't use the law of space. Even if he can't beat you, he can still escape. Don't tell me you didn't consider this problem? The Tree Demon King was right. Even if Lin Zhen couldn't win, he could still run away. They had set up such a big formation, but it was very likely that it would be for naught. Then what should we do? Asked the baby spirit. The Tree Demon King gritted his teeth. I have a way to suppress the opponent's teleportation, but after killing Lin Zhen, I want his mysterious yellow pagoda to be complete. Senior, do you have any ideas? Use a domain-type weapon to cover this entire area and prevent it from escaping. Then, you can do whatever you want. Senior, you have a domain equipment. That's right. When I came here, my elder brother gave me this. The Tree Demon King shook his hand and a treasure appeared in his hand. This treasure was a leaf, and it looked like it was made of jade in his hand. It was green and lustrous, and it was filled with endless vitality and vitality. This is the Tree Demon King's Forest of Night. Feeny, Anro, Osto, and the others exclaimed at almost the same time. The Tree Demon King was a plant life form, and his original body was a tree. He was able to achieve his current quasi-divine king level all because of his elder brother. When he was born, there was a towering tree by his side that sheltered him from the wind and rain every day. It was because of this that the Tree Demon King had the opportunity to grow and was not destroyed by the wildfire lightning. When the Tree Demon King and the tree transformed, he recognized the towering tree as his elder brother. His elder brother loved and cared for the Tree Demon King very much. After all, the two trees had been together for hundreds of millions of years, and the feelings they had for each other were incomparable. Even if they were parents and brothers, it was impossible for them to stay together for hundreds of millions of years. His elder brother was far superior to the Tree Demon King in terms of talent and strength. He was a very powerful divine king, and was known as the Tree Demon King. This Forest of Night was a mid-grade domain-type weapon that belonged to the Tree Demon King. This time, when the Tree Demon King came to the Mirror Lake continent to explore, his elder brother gave it to him for self-defense. Even if it was a mid-grade domain-type weapon, it was comparable to other types of high-grade weapons, or even peak-grade weapons. When this Forest of Night was used, it would cover an area of 10,000 li. The interior was covered in layers of branches and leaves, and it would be very difficult to break through. This was still in the Mirror Lake continent. If this domain-type weapon was used in the new territories, it could directly cover the entire Milky Way. The Tree Demon King did not want to personally take the risk, but he also wanted to obtain benefits, so he had no choice but to take out this trump card. DeLove clicked his tongue. Senior, this item is very good, but can it really trap Linjin? I think he has the strength of a quasi-divine king. The Tree Demon King laughed. It is impossible to completely trap him. After all, he still has a high-grade weapon. But are you all dead? As long as I can trap him for a few seconds, isn't that enough time for you all to use? Moreover, if he wants to leave the Forest of Night's domain, he won't be able to do it in less than 10 seconds. Haha, that's enough. If so many people can't deal with him within the domain, we can all go and commit suicide. DeLove and the others felt much more at ease. The Tree Demon King shook his hand, and the green leaf rose into the air. The veins on the leaf spread out in all directions, and the fine veins instantly stretched to the end of the horizon, covering everything as far as the eye could see. A layer of green light descended, and the sky changed color. There was light in the darkness, like the stars and moon in the pitch-black night sky. It was as if one was in a silent forest at night. The scenery was very beautiful. The Forest of Night has been completed. It's your turn. The Tree Demon King's figure flashed, and he hid in the darkness. After losing the Moon Elf Tree, he had spent a lot of effort to deal with Linjin. Haha, the domain has been completed. Linjin is already a turtle in a jar. Brothers, let's go. The 2,000 people of the various large guilds all felt that victory was in their hands. Under the leadership of each leader, they formed an assault arrow towards Linjin, coming from all directions. During their conversation, Linjin originally had a chance to escape, but he didn't do so. Now that he had just advanced to the peak of the intermediate celestial stage, his aura was at its peak, and his realm wasn't too stable yet. At this time, he definitely couldn't flee, or else he would have an inner demon. Moreover, Linjin didn't need to flee. Although the other side had many people, in his eyes, they were nothing more than chickens and dogs. Good. What a good domain equipment. This Tree Demon King is really working hard. Since you're working so hard, I can't let you down. Let the results bear witness to everything. I'm still a nobody in the sea of constellations. Let the iron and blood of this battle be my first shot in the sea of constellations. Wielding the jackdaw sword, Linjin targeted his first enemy. DeLove of the 8 Great Hammers. Chapter 1187. DeLove raised his 5-metal hammer high and charged at the front. The grudge between the 8 hammers and Linjin was nothing, but Linjin's treasures were real. After venting his anger, Linjin's sharpness faded a lot. This made DeLove less fearful. Even though he was leading the charge, he wasn't a fool. Linjin attacked first, but he wouldn't counterattack. Behind him, countless attacks would follow. If Linjin attacked him, it would be difficult to dodge the following attacks. This was a tactical time difference. He knew that Linjin wouldn't dare to take the risk. He seemed reckless, but he was actually very smart. He unleashed all of his divine power. His divine power exceeded 4.5 million. The middle-grade war hammer in his hand whistled through the air. He also used his battle technique. Even a quasi-divine king wouldn't dare to take such a violent attack head-on. Seeing that Linjin was also flying in this direction, DeLove revealed a sinister smile. His tactic was about to succeed. The war hammer in his hand drew an arc. In his opinion, Lin Zhen would choose to dodge when he got close to him. His war hammer contained many follow-up moves. The people behind him were all experienced fighters. They were all prepared to kill Lin Zhen, trying their best not to give him a chance to dodge or teleport. But he never expected that the two of them would actually collide head-on. Lin Zhen didn't even think of retreating. He kept accelerating. When he was 100 meters away, the genetically modified light-chasing beast's body accelerated to the limit. Buzz! With the jackdaw sword in hand, Lin Zhen became one with it. He was like a bullet nailing Dilof in the chest. The jackdaw sword and war hammer met for less than a 10,000th of a second. Although Dilof's war hammer was strong, its quality was one grade lower than Jackdaw's. Moreover, after Lin Zhen's additional gold, Jackdaw was the strongest weapon among the high-grade weapons. The rainbow that pierced the sky easily broke through the war hammer's defense and pierced through Dilof's chest. You're courting death. Dilov was also a ruthless man. He hadn't expected Lin Zhen to be so wild, but in his last moments, he abandoned his warhammer and grabbed Jackdaw for dear life. He hoped to delay Lin Zhen for a fraction of a second and give the people behind him an opportunity. Then, an opportunity appeared. Countless attacks landed on Lin Zhen's body from behind. It was as if a rocket had hit a battlefield, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. But soon, the light faded and Lin Zhen's body was unharmed. This is impossible. Dilov died with his eyes wide open. After all, there were quite a few metal armors that managed to hit him. How could Lin Zhen's body be so tough? Lin Zhen sneered. Nothing is impossible. Die. The jackdaw's golden aura exploded and Dilof's body was blasted into pieces. Lin Zhen grabbed the war hammer with one hand and put it away. His hair danced in the wind as he charged into the crowd. In this group, Dilov was the strongest. The rest of the people didn't have more than 3 million divine power points. Lin Zhen's 6 million divine power points was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. No, it was like a tyrannical Qilin entering a flock of sheep. No one below Jackdaw could withstand a single blow. With a swing of his left hand, a dozen fell. With a swing of his right hand, another 7 or 8 fell. With another swing of his hand, another dozen fell. Lin Zhen ignored the enemy's attacks. The mysterious yellow pagoda rose above his head and blocked all energy attacks. Now that his body was close to middle-grade armor, most melee attacks were useless against him. Even some middle-grade armors could cause some damage to Lin Zhen. His freakishly powerful recovery would heal them instantly. Then, Lin Zhen would slaughter them mercilessly. Physical defense damage reduction, magic immunity, explosive attack power, unparalleled health, and automatic recovery bonus. As a result, these people's advantage in numbers didn't have any effect. Lin Zhen slaughtered them until their blood flowed like a river. Moreover, the people behind didn't know what was going on. They rushed in wave after wave and became ghosts under Lin Zhen's sword one by one. Divine crystals floated in the air. Pieces of armors became ownerless items. As for divine stones, they filled the sky. Blood splattered in the air. These high and mighty gods had just experienced an unprecedented calamity. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, more than 800 people fell under Lin Zhen's sword. No one had expected that the devil-masked man, who had made another breakthrough and comprehended the true essence of metal, would actually be this strong. Even a quasi-divine king would fall under the attacks of these people, but he was actually unscathed. Not only was he unharmed, but after 3 minutes, the number of people attacking was no longer as dense. Lin Zhen actually began to counterattack. His body was covered in blood. Lin Zhen held Jackdaw in his hand and began to chase after the frightened crowd. Teleport. With a teleport, he blocked the path of Jiang Chao from the Heaven Secret Alliance. A sword into the abyss. Jiang Chao screamed and died on the spot. Not even a speck of his body was left. In the next moment, Lin Jun appeared in front of Ao Duo in the dimensional arena. He ignored his opponent's fierce sword and counterattacked with the same sword, killing Ao Duo. The wound caused by the opponent's attack healed instantly. In the next moment, Lin Jun appeared in front of the Green Tiger Gang's baby spirit. The baby spirit released his nascent soul to Lin Jun in horror. His nascent soul was emerald in color. This person's spiritual power had reached the emerald glow perfection. However, Lin Jun released his nascent soul at the same time. The two nascent souls fought briefly in the air. Lin Jun's nascent soul held a condensed crystal spear and stabbed the baby spirit's nascent soul to death on the spot. Once the nascent soul died, the baby spirit's spiritual power also collapsed. He almost instantly became an idiot. Before he could become an idiot, Lin Jun's sword quickly killed him. At this time, 4 of the 6 leaders of the other party had already died. However, the scene of Lin Jun killing the baby spirit shocked everyone the most. Not only did Lin Jun's nascent soul hold a weapon, but more importantly, Lin Jun's nascent soul had actually reached the crystal formation stage. That represented the godly king realm. Could it be that Lin Jun had already advanced to the godly king realm? The crowd that was already on the verge of collapse from Lin Jun's slaughter seemed to have found a reason to flee. The opponent was actually a godly king. There was no point in continuing this fight. Although they were higher gods, a godly king was enough to defeat all of them. Run. The devil-masked man is a godly king. I'm not fighting anymore. Let go of this godforsaken domain. I want to quit. He's not the devil-masked man. He's also the devil-masked king. Heavens! I'm actually stupid enough to fight a godly king. Like a swarm of wasps, the remaining 1,000 or so people fled in all directions. However, Lin Jun did not plan on letting some people go. For example, Fini from the Northern Regions Alliance and Anro from the Sakura Alliance. These two people had the moon and star rings of the sun, moon, and star rings in their hands. Lin Jun teleported and caught up with Anro, who was trying to escape the forest of night. He raised his sword and finished him off from behind. At the same time, he reached into the divine realm with one hand and grabbed violently. Chapter 1188. Lin Jun was overjoyed after capturing the star ring. In his eyes, these deities were nothing to be afraid of. When the difference in power was too great, an advantage in numbers was no longer much of an advantage. Furthermore, these deities did not number in the millions, so they were not much of a threat to Lin Jun. After all, deities were not mortals, and their numbers were almost endless. It was impossible for there to be millions of deities gathered together for Lin Jun to slaughter. He was most looking forward to the moon ring and star ring in his battle with these deities. The sun ring, moon ring, and star ring were originally the same equipment, but Lin Jun only managed to snatch the sun ring. If the 3 rings were combined into one, it would become a high-grade spiritual equipment. The difference in price between mid-grade equipment and high-grade equipment was like heaven and earth. How could Lin Jun not snatch it? After obtaining the star ring, Lin Jun would obtain the moon ring, and this battle would be perfect. After killing Anro, Lin Jun headed straight for Fini, who was still on the run. This was the last one. Once he killed him and obtained the moon ring, this battle would basically be over. When Finley saw Lin Jun coming for him, he was instantly scared out of his wits. The surrounding people were all calling Lin Jun the Devil Mask King, and this was not a nickname for no reason. Only people at the Divine King level would add the word King. This represented the pinnacle of power in the universe, second only to the ruler. Finley did not believe that Lin Jun already possessed the strength of a crowned emperor, and the people around him had only found an excuse out of fear. They had purposely called Lin Jun Ghostface King, so as to make their escape look less shameful. However, even if he was not a titled king, the current Lin Jun had the strength of a peak quasi-god king, and this was not something he could withstand. Finley howled as he charged into the dark forest domain, wanting to quickly escape. Initially, He thought that this was a hell that trapped Linjun, but now it had become a cage that trapped them. However, he could not open the domain in a short amount of time with his strength. The only way was for the Demon Tree King to open the domain. However, the Tree Demon King remained indifferent to all of this. From the Demon Tree King's point of view, although these people were currently in a state of disunity, Lin Zhen was crazily chasing after them. The other party would inevitably fight back like a cornered beast. They would definitely fight back with all their might. Even if they couldn't achieve anything worth mentioning, it would be good if they could exhaust some of Lin Zhen's strength. As long as Lin Zhen was weakened, the Tree Demon King would take action at the critical moment. With this domain-type equipment, the Tree Demon King's combat strength would be increased by quite a bit. He still felt that he had a chance of defeating Lin Zhen. At that time, no matter how much Lin Zhen obtained here, wouldn't it all belong to him alone? As for the deaths of the others, what did that have to do with him, the Tree Demon King? He, the Tree Demon King, was not a soft-hearted person. How could he be called a Demon King for nothing? Therefore, when Lin Zhen chased after Finley, Finley had nowhere to run. Finley himself was also in despair. It seemed that the Tree Demon King was using these 2,000 people as cannon fodder. It was laughable that they were so calculative and wanted to obtain more benefits, but in the end they were all used by someone else. Just as he was in despair, the Forest of Night's domain suddenly opened. Feeney saw the light at the end of the tunnel and rushed out before Lin Zhen could arrive. At the same time, a scream came from the sky. It was the Tree Demon King. "Andamandes, you actually dare to sneak attack me!" The battle seemed to have paused in an instant. Everyone looked towards the sky, including Lin Zhen, because he heard Andamandes' name. In the sky, Andamandes was wielding a longsword and had already chopped off one of the Tree Demon King's arms and half of his body, causing the other party to be heavily injured. Anda sneered, "You brainless idiot. If you don't open your domain now, with Lin Zhen's crystal formation stage mental strength and the Sun-Moon-Star Ring, who would have the confidence to defeat him? When the time comes, you'll also be dead." After speaking, Anda suddenly flew towards Finley, who still thought he had escaped, and finished him off with a raise of his sword. He then took the other party's moon ring. After taking the moon ring, Anda gave Lin Zhen a mocking smile. "My junior brother, what a pity. If you can't get the moon ring, your mental strength equipment won't be able to take form. You won't blame your senior brother for ruining your plans, right?" Lin Zhen secretly lamented that it was a pity. He was still one step away. Anda had been sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. Moreover, he had clearly done sufficient research on Lin Zhen. When Lin Zhen obtained the moon ring, he had already made his move. The two sides were already on opposite sides, so there was nothing wrong with trying to trip him up. It was just that the timing was really good. Lin Zhen also revealed a smile. "Senior brother Anda really knows how to read the timing. This move is very beautiful." "Haha. No need to be polite. I'm also thinking for myself. After all, weakening your strength makes it easier for me to deal with you later. But don't worry, after you die, I will let the Hunyuan armor and the Sun-Moon-Star Ring shine brightly in the sea of constellations. This way you can be considered to have indirectly fulfilled your wish. Senior brother is too polite. However, I feel that it's better for me to personally fulfill this wish. Haha, you might not know this, but while you were fighting with these brainless idiots, I also took care of one of our senior brothers. Right now, I also have 8 rulers' imperial jade seals in my hand." Lin Zhen's heart skipped a beat. When he looked into the dimensional universe, he suddenly realized that there were only 4 people left in the preliminaries. One was him with 8 rulers' imperial jade seals, the other was Anda with 8 rulers' imperial jade seals, and Green actually had 8 rulers' imperial jade seals in his hands. There was also another person, a high god called Feng Manlu, who had 1 ruler's imperial jade seal in his hands. Clearly, during this period of time, Anda wasn't the only one who took advantage of the chaos to fish in troubled waters. Green was also secretly making his move. Lin Jun didn't know where Feng Manlu was, and Anda probably didn't know either. However, it was clear that his target was Lin Jun. Anda's strength was extremely strong. At least in Lin Jun's opinion, Anda's current strength was definitely on par with his own. He was also an expert among the quasi-god kings. Lin Jun was on guard, but Anda didn't feel relaxed either. He first faced the demonic tree king and said, "Demonic tree king, why aren't you scramming? What are you doing here? Do you want me to personally kill you? If it weren't for your elder brother, the demonic tree king, I would have already cut you into 18 pieces and burned you for firewood." The demonic tree king's expression changed a few times. He wanted to act out, but at this moment, his injuries weren't light. Anda and Lin Jun were also two ferocious people. If he stayed, he really wouldn't have a good ending. Good. Andamandes, I'll remember you. See you in the future. After saying these words, the demonic tree king put away the night forest and went straight to his free satellite. After going up, he quickly left. Lin Jun knew that it wasn't that Anda didn't want to kill the demonic tree king. After all, the night forest was very attractive to anyone. What he was worried about was that he would take advantage of the battle between him and the demonic tree king to launch a sneak attack. His actions showed his determination to take down Lin Jun. After all, the mixed yuan armor was the most important. Chapter 1189. After the tree demon king left, most of the surrounding people also left the area. Only a few of the more courageous ones would scatter around the area and watch the battle from afar. Lin Jun had already collected most of the divine crystals, armors, and other items floating in the air. Only a few of the less valuable items remained. Lin Jun couldn't be bothered to take them, so he focused all his attention on Anda. The two of them had already become mortal enemies. Apart from the matter of Aegis, when it came to the origin armor and the sun-moon star bracelet, neither of them wanted to give up. Anda slowly raised his hand and raised the sword in his hand. Seeing this sword, Lin Jun's pupils shrank slightly. This sword was very similar to the jackdaw in his hand. They were clearly a set. With his powerful eyesight, Lin Jun saw the name of the sword in Anda's hand. 18 godly swords, flamingo. If one were to ask Lin Jun's best treasure right now, it wouldn't be the mysterious yellow pagoda, nor the sun-moon star bracelet. It wouldn't even be the lightning cloak or the origin armor that he hadn't obtained yet. It would be the 18 godly swords. The combination of the 18 godly swords and the sword case was the best of the best. It was the strongest weapon of the 100 Birds Dominator. However, Lin Jun hadn't thought of collecting the 18 godly swords. After all, there were too many of them. However, that didn't mean that he wouldn't be tempted by the other sword in front of him. He hadn't expected Anda to have a flamingo. Anda also saw the sword in Lin Jun's hand and sneered. "Lin Jun, it seems that you and I are fated to meet. Now that we're involved in the ownership of 3 armors, I can't let you go no matter what. Although it's good, it's up to you to take it. Anda, you won't have that chance." Lin Jun wasn't afraid of Andamandes, who was at the pinnacle of the quasi-god king realm. Although Andamandes had released his divine power to the maximum, Lin Jun could feel that his strength was on par with his own. Lin Jun, die. Anda made his move. Dense fire elements surrounded him, and the flaming crane in his hand slashed toward Lin Jun. Lin Jun wielded jackdaw and met the attack head-on. The difference in strength between the two of them wasn't too great. Ordinary tricks were useless at this point. They could only fight head-on with their true strength. The surging firepower and the biting cold air collided head-on. The two completely different energies exploded into a powerful shockwave. It was as if a nuclear bomb had exploded in the air, causing the water of Mirror Lake to fill the sky. The mysterious yellow pagoda rose above Lin Jun's head. Anda also had a protective shield-like treasure above his head, blocking the lake water. The lake water was very corrosive and was not suitable for fighting. The two of them stopped at the same time and waited for the lake water to fall before instantly coming into contact again. This time, it was a battle of speed, a battle of life and death. Every move was as fast as lightning, and it was impossible to capture with the naked eye. One could only see two faint silhouettes repeatedly attacking in the sky and on the ground. Occasionally, one or two sounds of weapons clashing could be heard from the east. Then, they would run to the west and sparks would appear in the air. Lin Jun relied on the genes of the chasing light beast and the advantage of teleportation to gradually gain the upper hand in terms of speed. With the advantage of speed, Lin Jun started to suppress Anda. Just as the cold air was about to explode and suppress the flames, a pair of wings suddenly erupted from Anda's back. The feathers were as sharp as knives and had an exaggerated appearance. This was a mid-grade pair of wings. Lin Jun, don't think that you're the only one with a few treasures. As someone who can step into the Divine King realm at any time, I also have many treasures. They won't be inferior to yours. With the acceleration of the wings, Anda's speed actually surpassed Lin Jun's. The two of them clashed head-on again. This time, Anda, who had the advantage in speed, gained the upper hand. The two of them were about the same level of god power, but Andamandi's life gene level surpassed Lin Jun's. It looked like he had at least completed level 6 of his life gene level. The higher one's life gene level was, the stronger one's physique would be. This was vividly displayed at this moment. The quality of the two swords was about the same, and their god power was about the same. However, in the back-and-forth attacks, Lin Jun was still slightly inferior to his opponent every time. This was the embodiment of life genes. However, it was also impossible for Anda to defeat Lin Jun quickly. Lin Jun originally had the indestructible tyrant body. Now that he had comprehended the true meaning of metal, the intrinsic strength of his body almost surpassed that of anyone else. Although Anda's life genes had the advantage, it was still impossible for him to defeat Lin Jun. The battle went on for 3 whole days and nights. Anda started with the advantage, then gradually lost it. In the end, he actually fell into a disadvantage again. Even if his life genes were stronger, he still couldn't defeat Lin Jun. Lin Jun was the true king of protracted battles. As long as the opponent didn't have an absolute advantage over him, it was impossible to defeat him. Lin Jun could even continue fighting like this forever. Absolute zero. The jackdaw sword with gold attached to it swung, and a ball of frost energy exploded. Lin Jun had unleashed the frost energy to the maximum. Eternal true fire. And it didn't back down at all. The flamingo released a ball of fire, blocking the frost energy. The two balls of ice and fire had just collided when a dazzling ball of holy light suddenly erupted from the frost energy. It had to be known that in front of an energy that had comprehended the true meaning of metal, those that had yet to comprehend the true meaning of metal had no place. Lin Jun hadn't used his holy light before because he was waiting for an opportunity. However, Anda wasn't a pushover either. He seemed to have long been on guard against Lin Jun's trump card. At this moment, a stone wall suddenly rose up. He had actually comprehended the true meaning of the earth element in addition to the power of fire. The earth element blocked the holy light. Lin Jun's lips curled up, and a golden light burst forth again. The golden aura condensed into a giant sword, and ruthlessly pierced through the stone wall. This was the third type of elemental energy that Lin Jun had comprehended, metal. Using the holy light as a feint, baiting the opponent's stone wall to appear prematurely, and then using the golden aura to attack. This was a complete set of plans. The golden light pierced through, and Anda let out a muffled groan. He hadn't expected Lin Jun's plan to be so meticulous. He had followed up with one move after another, causing him to suffer a loss. A bloody hole had been blasted into his shoulder. Originally, it could have been healed in a short period of time, but Lin Jun had fiercely rushed forward like a maggot in a tarsal bone and used a desperate method to tie Anda down. He actually wanted to decide the victor at this moment. With a miscalculation and Lin Jun taking the initiative, Anda's situation was a little dangerous. Anda couldn't believe his eyes. He hadn't been able to take down Lin Jun after 3 days of bitter fighting, and his life was actually in danger. In front of him, Lin Jun's sword flashed, and his ultimate killing moves emerged one after another. Amidst the golden aura that filled the sky, there were even occasional bolts of lightning that fiercely struck down. Apart from water, light, and metal, he was actually also proficient in the true meaning of lightning. For the first time, Anda felt that he wasn't the main character. He had always been the strongest, but only now did he realize that he really didn't have as much potential as Lin Jun. Golden aura accompanied by lightning, the two most powerful and violent elements appeared at the same time, and the lethality multiplied. Anda's life was actually in danger. Chapter 1190. Lin Jun was also very excited. Anda's realm was higher than his, and he was a true quasi-divine king. Anda's genes were higher than his, and he even had flying equipment. Now, he couldn't stop him. Thinking of the treasures he needed on Anda, Lin Jun sped up. He wanted to strike while the iron was hot and end this battle. Clang, 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 clang! A series of explosive sounds of weapons clashing formed a line, forcing Anda to retreat. Poof! Another sword strike. Jackdaw swept across one of Anda's legs. The wound wasn't big, but the cold air had affected his movements, making it difficult for him to fight. No! Anda seemed to be panicking. If this continued, he might lose his life. Lin Jun, how about we call a truce? I'll give you my moon ring and we'll end it here. Otherwise, if I fight with my life on the line, you won't be able to win. Cut the crap. Unless you hand over the ruler's jade seal, moon ring, and sword in your hand, there's no need to talk. Anda's nostrils flared as he huffed and puffed. His eyes had turned crimson red. Lin Jun's request was too much. If he handed over these things, what else could he use to fight against Lin Jun? He might as well admit defeat and wait for death. He couldn't accept these conditions. He definitely wouldn't allow himself to be defeated by Lin Jun. He was also a proud and arrogant person. He had never met anyone more outstanding than himself. Now that Lin Jun was here, his mentality was crumbling. He was ready to fight with his life on the line. Lin Jun, you're too greedy. You'll never defeat me. Never. Lin Jun didn't stop at all. He didn't want to waste his breath. Taking down Anda was the key. You're forcing me. Then I'll let you know what true terror is. An extremely terrifying aura spread out. The entire sky was filled with wind and clouds. Anda stood there, an extremely violent aura gushing out. His divine power was so high that no one could approach him. He was about to break through. Lin Jun also did not expect such a change to occur. It turned out that Anda was already on the verge of breaking through to the Divine King realm. It was just that he felt that the time was not yet right, and that he was not in his best condition, so he was still suppressing his desire to break through. Lin Jun was also aware of this point. When they first entered the Sea of Constellations, Lone Star Fishing Old Man had given everyone a time limit of 3,000 years. Those who entered the God King realm within 3,000 years would be able to pass the test and receive Lone Star Fishing Old Man's teachings. Anda must have wanted to suppress the time and train for a period of time, or find some good treasures before breaking through, but he had ruined it. Now that he had been forced into a dead end by Lin Jun, if he didn't break through now, then he would never be able to. Thus, Anda had been forced to break through. In this way, there would be a flaw in his breakthrough, and there would probably be no hope for him to become a ruler in the future. Lin Jun had ruined Anda's hopes of becoming a dominator. The grudge between the two of them could be considered quite big. The commotion caused by breaking through to the God King realm was too great. Almost the entire Mirror Lake continent could feel it. The surrounding people were in a frenzy. They never thought that they would be able to witness the birth of a God King here. They didn't even dare to stay where they were, because the God King had been suppressed and humiliated before. It was better for them to stay as far away as possible. In the eyes of the others, Lin Zhen was dead meat. Although many people called Lin Zhen the Devil Mask King, they knew in their hearts that Lin Zhen was still a little weaker than a God King. He might have an advantage against a quasi-God King, but against a true God King, he would definitely lose. From a quasi-God King to a God King, this was a huge breakthrough. It was even bigger than a lower god advancing to a middle god or a middle god advancing to a higher god. Even the weakest God King would have more than 3 million divine power points. It wasn't after fusing, nor was it after activating the god's domain. It was from the start, and it was already this strong. And Enda was obviously not the weakest. He was a powerhouse even among the quasi-god kings. With this breakthrough, his divine power points would definitely be more than 3 million. Seeing the sky change color and heaven and earth turn upside down, Lin Zhen knew that he was in danger. As expected, Enda's breakthrough ended very quickly. Enda didn't even have time to stabilize his realm before a terrifying pressure came towards Lin Zhen. Lin Zhen could clearly feel that after the breakthrough, Enda's star power points had already exceeded 10 million. It had even exceeded a lot. He couldn't tell exactly how much it had exceeded, but it was very strong. Lin Zhen, you're dead meat this time. Enda's eyes were still blood-red. Although the breakthrough this time had doubled his strength, it didn't reach the ideal result in his heart. As a result, his path to becoming a dominator was blocked. He wanted nothing more than to eat Lin Zhen alive, but he felt that simply killing Lin Zhen would be letting him off too easily. He wanted to torture him properly. From today onwards, I am called the Hatred God King. Lin Zhen, you are the target of my hatred. After I kill you, your family and friends, everyone close to you, will be my targets of slaughter. Even your hometown, your race, I won't let a single one of them go. Since I can't become a dominator anymore, I have nothing to worry about. And Amandes wanted to make Lin Zhen feel fear. He wanted to make him feel fear. Only then would he be able to ease the hatred in his heart. Lin Zhen's expression was as still as water. He said to Andamandes, with this mentality of yours, becoming a God King is already a blessing from the heavens. You still want to become a dominator? Pay. Even now, I'm afraid you can't kill me. Ah, Lin Zhen, you scoundrel, you don't know how strong a God King is. Die. Anda roared and pounced towards Lin Zhen. As that tyrannical aura approached, Lin Zhen issued his final resistance. Facing the other party's unstoppable divine power, Lin Zhen's only way was to teleport. Although Anda was a God King, he still couldn't use spatial laws. He could only chase after Lin Zhen's teleportation. However, Anda had a winged armament behind him. Adding on the fact that his divine power had skyrocketed, his attacks were fierce and powerful. It wasn't so easy for Lin Zhen to teleport away. The wings behind Anda flapped, his divine power firmly locking onto Lin Zhen. His mental power was also at the crystal formation stage now. A moon ring floated in front of him, as he continuously attacked Lin Zhen with mental attacks and divine might mandate. Ha ha, Lin Zhen, run. I'll see how long you can run. I'll play with you properly today, and let you experience the feeling of a mouse about to be eaten by a cat. Mental attacks combined with sword technique. A sword light flashed past Lin Zhen's shoulder and chopped off his arm. Lin Zhen didn't have time to teleport, leaving behind a severed arm in the air. Although it grew out in the next moment, his body was inevitably damaged and his face was distorted. No matter how he ran, Anda's continuous pursuit would arrive immediately. It looked like it was only a matter of time before Lin Zhen was killed. Phew. God Kings are indeed strong, but it's not like I don't have a chance. In the process of running, Lin Zhen wasn't actually flustered in his heart. Instead, he was very excited, because he already discovered that within the dimensional universe, among these pre-selected disciples of Lone Star Fishing Old Man, Anda had actually already passed. Advancing to God King meant that he passed the test. He was about to be teleported away. A countdown had already appeared now. There were less than 2 minutes before Anda would leave. Chapter 1191. Anda's heart was already filled with the desire for revenge. He had clearly forgotten about this. He still thought that Lin Jin was merely a monkey in his palm. He thought that Lin Jin would never be able to escape his grasp no matter what. He had already injured Lin Jin time and time again. He even had several chances to heavily injure Lin Jin to death. However, he did not do so. That would be letting this guy off too easily. He had actually severed his path to becoming a ruler. How could a simple death relieve his hatred? At this moment, many ideas flashed through Anda's mind. For example, he could make a crystal ball and lock Lin Jin's soul in it. Then, he could bring Lin Jin's soul around and let Lin Jin witness his loved ones being tortured to death before his eyes. Only by seeing his hometown destroyed and his race exterminated could he vent the hatred in his heart. Since he had reached the peak of the Divine King realm, there was no need for him to pursue anything else. In the days to come, he, Anda, would take pleasure in tormenting Lin Jin. His rationality was gradually disappearing under this mentality. Lin Jin was happy that Anda thought this way. He teleported time and time again to evade and turn in flight. It seemed like his final struggle was laughable. Ha ha! Lin Jin, it's really interesting to see you struggle for your life. This turn is not bad. I'll give you 8 points. This teleportation won't do. You can't hide the spatial fluctuations from a divine king like me. A frog at the bottom of a well like you will never understand the might of a divine king. No matter where you teleport to, my divine might and destiny can stop you. I can only give you 5 points. Watch out for my sword. Haha, I told you to watch out for my sword, but you still couldn't dodge it. You're really useless. Lin Jin was struck by the sword again, and his body fell on top of a volcano. The wound on his body was huge. It almost cut him in half. However, his body was strong enough now. Such a huge wound could be healed quickly. He secretly glanced at the dimensional universe. There was still a minute before Lonely Star Fishing Old Man's teleportation. It's about time Lin Jin did not teleport again. He watched as Anda landed in front of him. Ah, Lin Jin, you despicable rat. Why aren't you running anymore? Do you think you have no chance of escaping? Anda's moon ring floated in front of him as he held the Fire Crane Divine sword in his hand. He looked at Lin Jin with a mocking smile. Lin Jin also forced a smile. Yeah, I don't think there's any point in running around like this. We still need to settle things between us. You? What do you want to end with me? You can only be finished off. Anda gnashed his teeth. Until the dust settles, no one knows what will happen. However, senior brother Anda, I truly sympathize with you. Why do you pity me? I sympathize with you. You were originally the pride of the heavens. You were the strongest under Master Lone Star Fishing Old Man's tutelage. I know that in your heart, you wanted to inherit Master Lone Star Fishing Old Man's legacy and become a powerful ruler in the future. But now your dream of becoming a ruler can only remain a dream. When Anda heard this, anger rushed to his head. Maybe, but you, Lin Jin, won't have the chance to see it. As he spoke, Anda raised the Fire Crane Divine sword in his hand and prepared to attack Lin Jin again. However, Lin Jin suddenly waved his hand and said to Anda, Anda, let me ask you another question. Spit it out. I'm in a bad mood right now. I just want to ask you, do you think you can kill me in 10 seconds? Anda was suddenly stunned. He did not know why Lin Jin asked this. However, if he asked himself honestly, Anda felt that with the law of space to dodge and the powerful recovery of the undying body, it was basically impossible to kill Lin Jin in 10 seconds. Even if he was a divine king, he could not do it. At the very least, it would take him 20 to 30 seconds. However, was there any point in asking this now? Lin Jin could not be so naive as to think that he still had a chance to escape, right? I admit that I can't kill you in 10 seconds, but so what? Will it change anything? Anda asked. Since you can't kill me in 10 seconds, there are still 10 seconds until Master Lone Star Fishing Old Man teleports you. What right do you have to be so cocky in front of me? What? Anda hurriedly looked towards the dimensional universe, and his face instantly turned pale. It was because he could clearly see that among the 4 disciples selected by Lone Star Fishing Old Man, he had already completed Lone Star Fishing Old Man's mission and was about to be teleported away. Because he was in a hurry to get rid of Lin Jin, he had even forgotten about this. Moreover, he did not know why Lone Star Fishing Old Man would set up such a teleportation countdown. It was obvious that Lin Jin already knew about this. He was purposely playing around with him. A feeling of being toyed with rose within him. Anda really wanted to kill Lin Jin immediately. It's too late, Senior Brother Anda. There are still 9 seconds left. What else can you do? Looking at Lin Jin, who was ready to teleport away at any time, a feeling of helplessness rose within Anda's heart. Even if he attacked now, it would be useless. Lin Jin could easily dodge these few seconds. Lin Jin, don't be so smug. You'll advance to the Divine King level sooner or later. We'll meet again one day. When that time comes, I'll still settle the score with you. After leaving the Sea of Constellations, you'll lose the advantage of the law of space. When that time comes, there's no need to wait until then. Lin Jin did not wait for Anda to finish speaking. He suddenly roared and leaped into the air, the jackdaw sword in his hand slashing towards Anda. The instant Lin Jin made his move, the ultimate move he had been preparing for a long time exploded. Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Both Lin Jin and Anda had comprehended the Great Vajra Wheel Seal, which doubled the damage. However, Anda was not prepared, while Lin Jin was. This attack was very sudden. There were only 5 seconds left. Anda's expression changed. He raised his sword to block. It's useless, Lin Jin. I'm now a Divine King. Even if you use your seal technique, you can forget about defeating me. Is that so? Then what about now? An enormous aura suddenly exploded from Lin Jin's body. The powerful shockwave caused Anda to lose his balance. After all, he was now a Divine King. An aura that could cause him to feel fear could only mean one thing: the ruler's elixir. At this moment, Anda suddenly realized that everything was within Lin Jin's plan. He had long since prepared to use his seal technique and consume the sovereign's elixir. After consuming it, all of his strength would double. Lin Jin's divine power was already very strong. After doubling it, it exceeded 10 million. He already had the ability to fight Anda. In addition to the seal technique's attack, Anda was already at a disadvantage. Another factor was that time was very tight. Anda did not have time to do anything. In a situation where he was almost within reach, he was definitely at a disadvantage. Lin Jin managed to get his hands on the treasure. The jackdaw sword in his hand flashed in front of Anda. Anda's hasty defense did not block Lin Jin, who had consumed the sovereign's elixir. One of his arms was chopped off on the spot. Losing an arm was nothing. More importantly, he still held the Fire Crane Divine Sword in his hand. Anda screamed. He was about to use his spiritual power to counterattack when Lin Jin's spiritual attack came first, causing Anda to pause for a moment. Lin Jin's left hand was enchanted with gold. His claw swept through the air and directly grabbed the moon ring floating in front of Anda. Lin Jin even wanted to attack again. It would be best if he could kill Anda. Even if he couldn't, it would be good to take his flying equipment. But Anda was a divine king after all. At the final moment, he actually also erupted with an Akalanatha seal, sending Lin Jin flying a distance away. Time was up. Lonely Star Fishing Elder's teleportation power arrived. Anda's figure began to blur. Chapter 1192. Lin Jin grabbed the moon ring, then Anda's severed arm. Lin Jin tossed the severed arm aside. His focus was on the flamingo godly sword. After taking the flamingo godly sword, the jackdaw in his hand trembled slightly. The jackdaw's soul seemed to be welcoming its companion. However, the flamingo godly sword wasn't as useful to Lin Jun as the jackdaw. The flamingo godly sword's power was based on fire. Lin Jun still hadn't comprehended the true essence of fire. To Lin Jun, the sword was a high-grade weapon. Lin Jun put the flamingo godly sword away, then took the moon ring. This was Lin Jun's greatest gain from this battle. He then took out the sun ring and star ring. All three rings were in his hand. The sun ring was the largest, being the outermost ring. The moon ring was the second largest, being the middle ring. The star ring was the smallest, being the innermost ring. The three rings combined into one. With a crack, they fit together seamlessly. The sun, moon, and star's radiance flickered. This psychic attack weapon instantly became a high-grade weapon. Individually, they were mid-grade, but together, they were high-grade. Without the moon ring, the sun ring and star ring couldn't be combined. And Amandi's insight was quite unique. If he took away the moon ring, Lin Jun's weapon wouldn't be able to be of much use. However, he hadn't expected that even after breaking through to the God King level, Lin Jun would still succeed. He'd lost the flamingo godly sword and the moon ring. With the sun ring in hand, Lin Jun studied it for a moment. He discovered that it could be worn on his forehead like a headband. After fastening it, it actually fit perfectly. Lin Jun's somewhat messy hair was tied up, making it look much more nimble. This thing was originally a headband. There was an image of the sun, moon, and stars on his forehead. It also flickered with fluorescent light. It looked quite good, but Nye Yen didn't know which ruler had made it. There was another advantage to wearing it like this, which was that it was more convenient to use mental attacks and divine might of heaven's will. There was also no need to let it float in front of one's eyes, which would make it easy for others to sneak up on it. Aside from the sun, moon, star, hoops, and blazing cranes, Lin Jun had also obtained countless spoils of war. Currently, they were all in the celestial realm. If he were to sell them for points, it would be a huge income. However, Lin Jun didn't have the time to do this right now. Using the Sovereign's elixir had side effect. In 10 minutes, his divine power would double, but after that there would be a year of weakness, and his divine power would be halved. If Lin Jun's divine energy was reduced by half, he would be at the level of an ordinary late-stage high god. If he continued to stay here, he would be putting himself in grave danger. After all, many people knew about the effects of the Dominator's elixir. Someone might be secretly coveting it and waiting for the moment when Lin Jun was at his weakest to strike. Taking advantage of his current state, Lin Jun scanned the surrounding area with his spiritual power. With the enhancement of the sun, moon, star, hoops, everything within a radius of several 100,000 miles was unobstructed. Lin Jun quickly discovered many people hiding in the dark. These rats in the dark actually want to take advantage of me. Then I'll let you know the meaning of regret. With a teleport, Lin Jun arrived at a hidden spot. With a wave of his jackdaw, a peak high god hiding in the dark was killed on the spot. After collecting his spoils of war, Lin Jun teleported to the next target. 1, 2, 3, 5. Lin Jun made full use of this period of time when he was at his peak state and killed more than 20 people hiding in the dark. Those who thought they wouldn't be discovered by chance, Lin Jun didn't leave a single one alive. With his current level of spiritual power, no God King could hide in the dark. Not even a quasi-God King could do that. There were also some who ran out of their hiding places and fled for their lives. In less than 5 minutes, there wasn't a single person hiding in the dark within a radius of 10,000 miles. After doing all this, Lin Jun finally let out a sigh of relief. Next, he had to find a place to hide for a year. Lin Jun had already thought of where to go. It was in Mirror Lake. In the entire Mirror Lake continent, only Mirror Lake was the safest place. Others couldn't stay in Mirror Lake for too long. However, with the protection of the mysterious Yellow Pagoda, this was nothing to Lin Jun. Seeing that no one was watching him, Lin Jun teleported into Mirror Lake. Then, with continuous flying and teleportation, he quickly went to the depths of the lake. In 5 minutes, Lin Jun had already gone several 100,000 miles into Mirror Lake. When he felt that the effects of the ruler's elixir were about to disappear, he decisively took out the mysterious yellow pagoda and sank to the bottom of the lake. Rays of mysterious yellow chi were released, blocking the extremely corrosive lake water. Waves of weakness washed over him. Lin Jun also sank several 100 kilometers into the lake. This was originally a wasteland. Moreover, it was at the bottom of Mirror Lake. It could be said that no one had ever come to this forbidden area. Lin Jun recovered his incomparable safety here. I can't go out for a year. Therefore, I can use this time to challenge the sky-passing platform and stabilize my current realm. After Lin Jun comprehended the metal elemental true essence, he could already condense the 4th clone. However, he needed to cultivate to the 26th level of the sky-passing platform. Currently, he was on the 23rd level of the sky-passing platform. He still had to pass 3 levels. However, before that, Lin Jun had to take a good inventory of his gains from this battle. After his mind power entered the God realm, he didn't dare to say that there was a mountain of things here, but there was still a huge pile. God crystals, God stones, boundary stones, primal chaos origin stones, and some Huahua green gemstones. It was simply a huge pile of stones. However, these stones could be exchanged for an entire planet in the outside world. In addition to the stones, there were also many treasures, weapons, and other things mixed in. These things were even more valuable. Lin Jun even saw a few wood elemental crystals among them, which made his eyes light up. Beside this pile of things, there were a few shuttles and shield god ships thrown aside. However, there were no free satellites, which made Lin Jun slightly disappointed. Clone, go over and sort these things out for me. Lin Jun's lightning clone and light clone were originally in the God realm. They immediately came in front of this pile of treasures and began to happily sort them out. The beach area that Lin Jun left before was a mess after the battle. There were even some god stones and boundary stones scattered around, but no one went to collect them. After Lin Jun left, a person came from the volcano in the distance. If Lin Jun was here, he would definitely recognize that this was an old acquaintance of his. It was also the first person he met after leaving the primordial realm, Grim. Grim looked at the surrounding area that was riddled with holes and couldn't help but click his tongue. This junior of mine, Lin Jun, is really not simple. He even injured Anda, who had advanced to the God King level. This time, he's become famous and rich. Now that Anda has been eliminated, only Lin Jun and I can compete for the mixed Yuan armor. Both of us have 8 rulers' jade seals. There's also someone called Feng Manlu who has 1. Chapter 1193. Whether it was Green or Lin Jun, they both knew that the fight for the Hunyuan armor would begin between the two of them. Originally, Anda had the highest chance, but he was forced by Lin Jun to break through to the God King realm. In the end, he was teleported away by Lone Star Fishing Old Man. Lone Star Fishing Old Man had sent them all to the Sea of Constellations, which meant that the fight for the Hunyuan armor would end there. Now that Anda had left, he naturally withdrew from the fight. The key question now was Windsweeping Tower. Whoever found Windsweeping Tower first would obtain the Hunyuan armor first. Lin Jun couldn't give Green a jade seal, and Green couldn't give it to Lin Jun either. Moreover, the two of them had some friendship before, so it was best to avoid direct confrontation. However, no one knew where Windsweeping Tower was, nor did they know if he came to the Mirror Lake continent to participate in the reclamation. Green couldn't even remember who Windsweeping Tower was. When Lone Star Fishing Old Man gathered all the preliminary disciples, he didn't introduce them one by one. Everyone's attention was on the experts, so Windsweeping Tower was probably an unremarkable person. Green was prepared to use his father's connections. As the son of a ruler, green did have many natural advantages. In the mirror lake, a satellite was moving forward. Within the satellite, the tree demon king sat with a gloomy expression. This time, he had come with full confidence regarding Lin Jun. After all, there were only 2 god monarch experts in the entire Mirror Lake region. One was a friend of his brother, the Tree Demon King, called the Violent Ape King. Before the Tree Demon King transformed, the Violent Ape King was just a very talented Starry Sky Violent Ape. At first, he lived on the Tree Demon King's main tree. The two of them had a very deep relationship, and the Tree Demon King was just their little brother. The other God King was called the Demonic Corpse King. The Demonic Corpse King's main body was a mass of corpse energy born in ancient tombs. It was born with the ability to control the power of the dead. It was extremely brutal, and no one was willing to provoke it. This time, after learning about Lin Jun's situation, the Tree Demon King asked the Violent Ape King for help. He hoped that the Violent Ape King could delay the Demonic Corpse King so that he couldn't interfere. That way, it would be easier for him to seize the treasure. The Violent Ape King agreed out of consideration, but he didn't expect Andamandes to appear out of nowhere and ruin the Demon Tree King's plans. What was even more unexpected was that Lin Jun actually defeated Anda and even obtained the title of Ghost Face King. Now, when people were discussing the quasi-divine kings and divine kings, Lin Jun's position was a little vague. Some people said that he was the strongest quasi-divine king, while others said that he was the weakest divine king. But no matter what the result was, he, the Tree Demon King, was just a clown in this battle. First, he lost the Moon Elf Tree. Then, he took out the Dark Forest Domain equipment. In the end, he was still injured by Anda's sword and had no choice but to flee in a sorry state. Originally, the Tree Devil King's strength was considered above average among quasi-divine kings. But now, people believed that he was at the bottom of the quasi-divine kings. Such an outcome was hard for the proud Demon Tree King to accept. Bastard! The Tree Demon King's branch-like fist smashed into the control panel of the free satellite, causing the aircraft to tremble. His fierce gaze fell outside. If someone appeared in front of him right now, he would definitely not hesitate to find trouble with that person to ease the hatred in his heart. Just as he was thinking, a string of bubbles suddenly appeared on the surface of the mirror lake in front of him. There's movement here? The Tree Demon King's eyes immediately lit up. He immediately had the free satellite activate its cloaking device and float in the air. He thought that something that could move under the mirror lake should be a small underwater propeller. This way, he could activate the energy shield and enter the water. Moreover, the energy consumption would be relatively small. But the underwater propeller didn't produce bubbles. Then what was this? Could it be some mysterious creature? The satellite stopped. This kind of high-end stealth aircraft was not easy to discover. The thing under the water clearly didn't notice and quietly revealed its head. F***CK. It's actually a person. The Tree Demon King was stunned. Because what appeared under the water was actually a person. This person's entire body was pitch black, so black that it shone. He swam up and down in the water like a big fish. He was actually not affected by the corrosive lake water. One had to know that this lake water was something that even God Kings didn't dare to touch directly. There was actually someone who wasn't afraid of it. The Tree Demon King's withered bark-like face twitched. Even us plant life forms don't dare to touch this lake water. He actually dares to swim like this. How can we let him live? The Tree Demon King waved his hand and a few peak high gods flew out from the free satellite. They quietly spread out a large alloy net and captured this unprepared early-stage high god. This person wasn't very strong and was captured without being able to resist. "Who are you?" the Tree Demon King asked. This person stuttered for a long time, not daring to speak. The Tree Demon King was currently in an irritated mood and didn't have the patience to be long-winded with him. He directly had someone use a device to read this person's memory. This kind of memory reading was done through a device. It was different from Lin Zhen's soul search. It could only read fragments of the person's memory. As for some core understanding of martial arts and other things, the device couldn't reflect it and couldn't provide much help. The Tree Demon King dealt with this person purely because of his talent. He actually didn't fear the corrosive water of the Mirror Lake and out of jealousy. But he didn't expect that this reading would actually cause a problem. This person was actually a pre-selected disciple of a powerful ruler called Lonely Star Fisherman. His name was Feng Manlu. He was born with a hypertoxic body that could resist all kinds of poisons and acidic substances. This kind of corrosive lake water had no effect on him at all. Therefore, after entering the Mirror Lake, he hid here. However, his luck wasn't very good. After all these years, he didn't find any good treasures in the lake. At most, he only found a mid-grade saber. Another reason he didn't want to leave the lake was to prevent others from finding him. After all, his fellow apprentices were probably looking for him. This included Andamandes, Green, and Lin Zhen. Anyone could catch and kill him for the ruler's imperial jade seal. After learning the secret of the ruler's imperial jade seal, the Tree Demon King opened his mouth wide in shock. Ha ha! There's actually such a thing? The heavens are really helping me. He didn't kill Feng Manlu. He only took one of his ruler's imperial jade seals. My talent is only at this level for the rest of my life. I don't expect to become a ruler's disciple. But since you can obtain the immemorial armor with the 9 rulers' imperial jade seals, so can I. Anda, Lin Zhen, Green. These 3 people all have 8 rulers' imperial jade seals. As long as I can kill one of them, the immemorial armor will be mine. Chapter 1194. After imprisoning Feng Manlu on his satellite, the Tree Demon King began to think of a way to deal with Lin Zhen. According to Feng Manlu's memories, Green shouldn't be very scary. However, the Tree Demon King didn't dare to be careless about Lin Zhen. To be able to defeat the God King Andamandes head-on, Lin Zhen's strength definitely couldn't be underestimated. Although he relied on the ruler's elixir, it was still very impressive. The Tree Demon King's brother, the Tree Demon King, was also a God King. However, even if the Tree Demon King consumed the ruler's elixir, he still wouldn't be the Tree Demon King's opponent. Moreover, the ruler's elixir had a fatal weakness. After consuming it once, the increase in strength would be reduced by 1/5 the next time. The first time the ruler's elixir was used, the second time would only increase by 80%. By the third time, it would be 60%. After 2 more times, it would be completely ineffective. This was also the reason why many people didn't consume the ruler's elixir to fight against Lin Zhen. Firstly, it was expensive. Secondly, these people had cultivated for hundreds of millions of years and had encountered countless dangers. They had already consumed the ruler's elixir many times. This thing was no longer of much use to them. Moreover, after reaching the God King level, their strength was already close to the ruler. The ruler's elixir had no effect on God Kings. The Tree Demon King wasn't too worried about Lin Zhen consuming the ruler's elixir again. Firstly, the increase in strength wasn't that obvious. Secondly, the aftereffects were too great. This time, the opening of the wasteland was limited. If Lin Zhen entered a weakened state again, he would still need to hide. Even so, the Tree Demon King could feel that Lin Zhen's true strength was probably at the quasi-God King level. This made him feel a little troubled. In the Mirror Lake continent, there were only 2 people who could deal with Lin Zhen. One was the Violent Ape King, and the other was the Demonic Corpse King. The Violent Ape King couldn't be counted on. The first time he asked the Violent Ape King to delay the Demonic Corpse King, the Violent Ape King agreed to this request out of respect for the Tree Demon King. There wouldn't be a second time. After all, if the Violent Ape King found Lin Zhen's treasure and the mixed Yuan armor would have nothing to do with the Tree Demon King. In front of benefits, friendship was a useless thing. As for the Demonic Corpse King, there was no need to consider it. In the eyes of the Treant King, the demonic corpse king was a demon. He would never approach it. Looks like I need to join forces with the quasi-god kings in the Mirror Lake continent. When the various alliances entered the Mirror Lake continent, almost all of them had a strongest expert. The leaders of those free satellites were almost all quasi-god king level expert. However, these people were scattered in the depths of Mirror Lake. It was not easy to get them to take action. In addition, there were also some quasi-god kings who acted alone and did not belong to any alliance. 2. In the depths of Mirror Lake, Lin Zhen had already taken stock of his harvest. There were over 700 god crystals, over 1,000 primal chaos origin stones, and over 30,000 world stones. There was no need to count the god stones. Lin Zhen kept the remaining god stones for himself to devour. He would need a huge amount of god stones for his future breakthrough. Lin Zhen had donated more than 70 million points for the divine crystals and 120 million points for the primal chaos origin stones. The world stones gave him over 30 million points. That was a total of 230 million points. Other than these points, the equipment was even more important. Among the people who had participated in the siege, Lin Zhen had obtained about 2,000 weapons of various types. Among them, 1,800 were supreme treasures. These items were not worth much. Fortunately, there were a lot of them. Lin Zhen donated all of them and obtained 15 million points. There were more than 100 armaments left, and most of them were low-grade armaments. With Lin Zhen's current level, it was impossible for him to use low-grade armaments with all his powerful treasures. Other than keeping a dozen armaments that looked good, he donated the rest and exchanged them for 120 million gold coins. There were only a dozen or so mid-grade equipment. Lin Zhen chose two for his own use. One was the lightning spear, and the other was the purple star armor. Because he had the jackdaw and flamingo, he didn't need anything else. Lin Zhen donated all of the remaining mid-grade equipment. Another 140 million points were added to his account. In this battle, Lin Zhen had obtained a total of 510 million points. In addition to Lin Zhen's original 340 million points, he now had more than 850 million points. With so many points, he could buy a high-grade flying equipment or even a mid-grade domain equipment. Lin Zhen had become rich overnight. Lin Zhen still felt that it was a pity. This battle did not give him any chance to lock the soul. Among those who died, there must have been a lot of points in their hand. It was wasted just like that. Otherwise, if he transferred all of their points, Lin Zhen would have been able to buy a flying palace. Even so, Lin Zhen still had a lot of points. Many quasi-god kings who had cultivated for hundreds of millions of years couldn't compare to him. In addition to these points, Lin Zhen also obtained 6 wood elemental crystals. Wood elemental crystals were useful to Lin Zhen. They were very expensive, but they were very effective for plant. Lin Zhen decided to give them to the treasure hunting vine and the star fruit tree so that they could evolve. Lin Zhen summoned the treasure hunting vine. After absorbing one of the wood elemental crystals, the treasure hunting vine changed slightly. However, it didn't seem to be enough. This guy has already used the crystals once. I'm afraid one won't be enough this time. He gave the treasure hunting vine 2 more crystals. The treasure hunting vine's energy finally reached saturation. Its body shone brightly, and it stopped moving in Lin Zhen's god world. It seemed to have entered the evolution stage. Lin Zhen patiently waited for the treasure hunting vine to evolve. Then, he gave another wood elemental crystal to the star fruit tree. The star fruit tree was the foundation that supported Lin Zhen's god world. It connected heaven and earth, and was much bigger than when it was on earth. After feeding it a wood elemental crystal, Lin Zhen felt that the tree had grown a little bigger. However, there were no fundamental changes. The star fruit tree looks like it can eat more than the treasure hunting vine. Lin Zhen weighed the last 2 crystals in his hand. Then, he gave them all to the tree. The star fruit tree grew a little bigger. However, it didn't change much. Lin Zhen felt that the star fruit tree needed about 7 more wood elemental crystals to evolve. No wonder it said that the vine is attached to the tree. Compared to the star fruit tree, the treasure-hunting vine is still much weaker. It needs 10 times more crystals than the treasure-hunting vine. I wonder what it will look like after evolution. Lin Zhen looked at the wood elemental crystals in the shop. They were worth 10 million each. With more than 800 million, it was enough for now. Lin Zhen bought another 7 crystals and gave them all to the star fruit tree. After absorbing the last crystal, the star fruit tree, like the treasure-hunting vine, had reached saturation and reached the evolution stage. It seemed that it wouldn't finish in 2 or 3 months. The mysterious yellow pagoda spun above Lin Zhen's head. He started to stabilize his realm. While stabilizing his realm, Lin Zhen started to challenge the sky-reaching platform again. 1 year. After 1 year, when my realm stabilizes, it'll be time to leave the bottom of the lake. I hope the star fruit tree and treasure-hunting vine will give me a surprise. Chapter 1195. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. On the Tree Demon King's satellite, 3 people were gathered together with him. Old Tree, you've been looking for the big guys for almost a year. Why is there no news at all? A pale-faced man who looked like a sickly ghost said. Yeah, we can't keep waiting like this. The wasteland has been open for 20 years, and it will be closed in 10 years. Whether it's Lin Zhen or Green, we can't keep waiting like this. A quasi-divine king from a rock lifeform added. Old Tree, have you thought of any ideas? The third person was a 2-headed demon. He was also a quasi-divine king expert. The Tree Demon King waved his hand. Don't be impatient. Of course, I'll do these things. During this time, I've already made corresponding measures. However, Lin Zhen and Green's dimensional universe are in a closed state. They should be cultivating. You also know that Lin Zhen has taken the ruler's elixir, so he needs a year of recuperation. When the year is up, his dimensional universe will open. I believe it should be in 2 or 3 days. As long as he sees the news I spread, he'll definitely take the bait. The Tree Demon King was full of confidence. Although the other 3 had their doubts, they had already waited for so long. 1 or 2 days wouldn't make a difference. Looking at his 3 companions, the Tree Demon King was also very confident in this operation. He had already investigated Lin Zhen's matter and had let Wind Mangler go out for activities during this period. Currently, there were several news of Wind Mangler finding equipment treasures in the dimensional universe. Of course, those treasures were also arranged by the Tree Demon King in order to let the news of Wind Mangler spread intentionally or unintentionally. Whether it was Lin Zhen or Green, he believed that when they saw this news, they would definitely be unable to resist. He could understand that Lin Zhen was in seclusion, but why didn't Green take the bait? This made the Tree Demon King somewhat depressed. It had been a year, and Green still hadn't appeared. He could only place his hopes on Lin Zhen and wait for the day when Lin Zhen came out of seclusion. If Lin Zhen didn't come, the arrangements of his 4 experts would be in vain. On a shield deity warship, Grimm was checking the recent Dimensional Universe forum. The latest harvest from the depths of the Mirror Lake district. A nameless person, Feng Manlu, found a middle-grade armor. Tui. Grimm closed the message of the Dimensional Universe and sneered. Do you really think I'm an idiot? You can only fool Lin Zhen with false information like this. Father told me long ago that Wind Sweeping Building has fallen into the hands of a quasi-god king. Everything you're doing now is a trap. I'll be damned if I fall for it. Green already had a card up his sleeve regarding this matter. He was very glad that he had asked his father. Grimm's father was a sovereign, fire dominator, Maplewood householder. At the ruler level, apart from those who sat on the throne of each elemental system, no one else was famous. They either lived in seclusion on a planet with beautiful scenery or in a dangerous forbidden area of the universe. Everyone had their own way of living, but they all had one thing in common, which was that their names were not very well known. For example, Lonely Star Fisherman and Maplewood Householder. Grimm had long discovered news about wind-sweeping building, but he was cautious and asked his father. In the end, his father told him this after investigating and told him not to be fooled. The mixed element armor was a good thing, but it was not worth trading one's life for it. Maplewood Householder even promised Grimm that the mixed element armor would fall into the hands of the demonic Tree King. After the demonic Tree King and the others got rid of Lin Jun, he would take the initiative to contact the demonic Tree King. Through him, he would ask his brother, the demonic Tree King, to hand over the mixed element armor. Maplewood Householder would give the demonic Tree King and the demonic Tree King certain benefit. Grimm worshipped his father. With his father's promise, he naturally would not take the initiative to fight for it. He was now sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. Lin Jun was about to come out of seclusion. At that time there should be a big show. However, it seemed that Lin Jun had no chance. The demonic Tree King had already invited his friends and was waiting for Lin Jun's arrival. Grimm did not believe that Lin Jun really had a chance to fight against a few quasi-god kings. This matter was basically settled. Under the Mirror Lake, Lin Jun's training had finally come to an end. The stabilization of his realm had been completed in the 3rd month of his seclusion. The current flow of time was very slow for Lin Jun. 3 months was dozens of years. His realm had stabilized at the peak of the mid-god stage. To be precise, he had just entered the peak. However, Lin Jun knew that stabilizing his realm was a matter of course. His focus was on the heavenly platform. Now, Lin Jun's 1 year was equivalent to 144 years. When he was training, he was on the 23rd floor of the heavenly platform. Among the 4 dark matter elements, gravitational leptons, weak wave leptons, and superquarks had all reached the standard to breed another doppelganger. Only the super electrons were currently at 390. The breeding of doppelganger required the 4 dark matter elements to reach 100 every time. Lin Jun had already bred 3 great doppelgangers. If he wanted to breed the 4th doppelganger, that required the super electrons to reach 410, because if it was only 400, the dark matter would return to 0 after the breeding. Something bad might happen. He had to store it in advance. 1 year's time was not enough to challenge 1 level of the heavenly platform. Even if Lin Jun had already trained many times before, it was still somewhat lacking. Hence, Lin Jun might as well stay for a period of time. He stayed under the Mirror Lake for a full 3 years. When the reclamation of Wasteland reached the 23rd year, Lin Jun finally cleared the heavenly platform's 23rd floor. Broke through. Actually, in Lin Jun's plan, he simply wanted to train to the 24th floor in one go. Only this way could he continue to breed doppelganger. But he did not expect that when he entered the 24th floor, each of the 4 dark matter elements actually increased by 20. The super electrons' data directly reached 410. So that's how it is. The heavenly platform has a total of 33 floors. Breaking through the 23rd floor is the last 10 floors. I didn't expect the 4 dark matter elements to increase so much. Lin Jun was overjoyed. The dark matter requirement was met. He could breed his next doppelganger. Slowly opening his eyes at the bottom of the Mirror Lake, Lin Jun prepared to take action. He had already comprehended the essence of the metal element. As long as he bred another doppelganger, he would truly be invincible against anyone below the Divine King level. But just as Lin Jun was about to begin, he was shocked to discover that his treasure-seeking vine and stellar fruit tree had changed. The treasure-seeking vine had changed greatly. Its previous green color had completely disappeared. The entire vine shone with a dark golden light. Its toughness had reached an unimaginable level. Even with the jackdaw sword, Lin Jun would find it very difficult to cut it in half. And that was under the condition that he did not run away. Moreover, the treasure-seeking range had expanded to 10,000 kilometers. Within 10,000 kilometers, no treasure could hide. Chapter 1196. The importance of the stellar fruit tree to Lin Jun was self-evident. Although the star crystals on the stellar fruit tree were no longer of much use to Lin Jun after he entered the God realm, the stellar fruit tree itself was the support of the God realm in Lin Jun's body. With the absorption of the wood elemental crystals, the stellar fruit tree began a new cycle of growth. The thickness of the tree trunk was now far greater than that of Earth, and the lush foliage was comparable to that of the solar system. Everything within the range of the stellar fruit tree was full of vitality, and all the plants were full of vitality. Above the tree trunk, the Heart Tree Lake was as vast as the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by green trees. This was the most magical lake. Inside the stellar fruit tree, there were a few places where the star crystals had begun to evolve. The beehive, ant nest, sky, these places were rich in star crystals. The star crystals began to emit divine power, which was more powerful than that of God's stones. It was just that these star crystals had not matured yet, otherwise, they would still be able to provide Lin Jun with additional divine power. These were not what shocked Lin Jun the most. What shocked him the most was that he could feel the strong wood elemental aura emitting from the stellar fruit tree, which allowed his understanding of the wood element to increase by leaps and bounds. The stellar fruit tree was a part of his God realm. With such a strong wood elemental aura, Lin Jun was about to comprehend the true essence of the wood element. This stellar fruit tree is indeed magical. Its evolution actually allowed my understanding of the wood element to increase by leaps and bounds. You must know that the cultivation of the wood element was my weakness before. With this magical discovery, Lin Jun could no longer care about coming out of seclusion immediately. He might as well stay in the God realm to comprehend the wood element. This time, his comprehension was extraordinarily smooth. With the help of the stellar fruit tree and the treasure-seeking vine, Lin Jun only took 10 days to comprehend the true essence of the wood element. Up until now, Lin Jun had only comprehended the elemental aura according to the needs of battle. For example, lightning, light, ice, and metal, these elements had powerful destructive power. As for the earth and wood elements, Lin Jun did not cultivate them too much because they were not of much help in battle. But this time, Lin Jun knew he was wrong. Although the wood element was not the most lethal element among all the elements, it was the one with the most vitality. The vigorous vitality not only gave his body a stronger recovery ability, it could even resist the attack of the negative energy of darkness. Since he had already mastered it, Lin Jun didn't plan to just sit around and do nothing. He decided to train in his divine wood clone here. Because the stellar fruit tree was the best place to do so. Originally, Lin Jun wanted to find a place to cultivate the metal element. However, in Lin Jun's heart, he had high hopes for the metal element. The metal element should be the most powerful element in battle. It wouldn't be easy to deal with it. But whether it was in Mirror Lake or the volcanoes outside, there was no suitable place to condense, and Lin Jun couldn't wait 10 years to leave. So, cultivating a wood clone now was the best choice. Once he made up his mind, the wood elemental energy within the star fruit tree began to converge on the surface of the lake. Soon, these elements condensed into a new person. It looked exactly the same as Lin Jun's original body, except that its face was calm, and its body was filled with a powerful vitality. A new divine wood clone had been born. Right now, Lin Jun was a peak-level god, and his divine clones were all peak-level gods. Aside from the divine water clone in the primordial realm, the 3 divine clones here were lightning, light, and wood. Each divine clone had 660,000 units of divine power. After the 3 divine clones fused their divine power, they could directly provide Lin Jun with 1.98 million units of divine power. Adding on Lin Jun's original bodies to 11 million units of divine power, even if Lin Jun didn't activate his domain, his divine power would still exceed 4 million. How powerful was this? After forming his divine wood clone, Lin Zhen took a look at the situation within the dimensional universe. With a single glance, Lin Zhen felt that something was off. Wind Manlu had been very active recently. This shouldn't be the case. Now, only he, Green, and Wind Manlu had the ruler's jade seal. Moreover, it was obvious that Wind Manlu wasn't very strong. Shouldn't he be hiding somewhere, not daring to show himself? Why did he think that he could block Lin Zhen's attack? Especially after Lin Zhen had revealed his strength? Why didn't Green look for Wind Manlu in these 3 years? It seemed that they were living in peace. Lin Zhen vaguely felt that there was something wrong here. Humph. It's probably because some people are confident that they can make me attack. Are you trying to lure the snake out of its hole? Good. Since you want to do this, you should think carefully. It might not be a cobra that comes out. It might even be a Titan python. Lin Zhen, who felt that there was a conspiracy, decided to temporarily stop his seclusion. There were still 7 years until the end of the wasteland reclamation. If he was given another 5 years, he was confident that he could comprehend the 3rd level of the layering battle technique that Lone Star Fishing Old Man had taught him. Outer Lion Seal. Originally, Lin Zhen planned to use this time to search for treasures. However, he didn't expect that there would be people who wanted to scheme against him. Since that was the case, Lin Zhen had to be confident before he left. The Outer Lion Seal was the essence of layering combat technique. It could increase one's lethality by 3 times. After learning this move, in addition to Lin Zhen's current strength, let alone a quasi-god king, even if it was a god king level expert, Lin Zhen had the confidence to make them suffer. The 2 strongest people in the Mirror Lake mainland were the 2 divine kings. Lin Zhen needed some life-saving trump cards. After calming himself down, Lin Zhen once again entered the state of cultivation. Originally, he would be in a weakened state for a year. Now, he had extended it to 8 years. This made things difficult for the Demon Tree King and the others. They set up a trap and waited bitterly for Lin Zhen to take the bait. However, they didn't expect that Lin Zhen would disappear without a trace. Once he started cultivating, he didn't even show his shadow for 8 whole years. By the 3rd year, they no longer let Feng Manlu appear casually. The few of them lost their patience and started cultivating on the Demon Tree King's satellite to pass the time. According to their past experiences, the best treasures might appear when the wasteland reclamation was about to end. Even if a few quasi-godly monarchs like them could not deal with Lin Zhen, it would be a good thing to prepare in advance and fight for the ultimate treasure when it appeared. The Violent Ape King and the Demonic Corpse King naturally came for the treasure at the end. However, the Demon Tree King and the other 3 Divine Kings might have a chance if they joined forces. Lin Zhen didn't appear and Green didn't take the bait. They had no choice but to wait patiently. As they waited, it was the 29th year of the Wasteland Reclamation. Chapter 1197. Compared to the previous exploration of wastelands, the scale of exploration this time was not considered large. Until now, no one in the entire Mirror Lake mainland had obtained a top-grade equipment. There were a few high-grade ones. Even for high-grade ones, the most valuable flying palace type and domain type equipment had not appeared. This made the experts slightly disappointed. Initially, there were hundreds of thousands of people who entered the Mirror Lake mainland. After so many years of fighting, there were less than 100,000 people left. This was the cruelty of the martial arts world. Those who survived were filthy rich. Those who died did not even have a life. However, this was not the end. Currently, there were signs of the volcano group becoming restless. There was still 1.5 years before it would erupt completely. This period of time was actually the time when treasures would explode. The best things would usually appear at the end. It all depended on whether one could persevere until the end. On the Mirror Lake, a free satellite was flying at a low altitude. This was the Free Satellite of the Northern Regions Alliance. The owner of the satellite was called Garcia. He was a quasi-god king expert. He was leading the people in the satellite to search for treasures. The method he was searching for was to send out underwater thrusters to search inch by inch. Although it was a stupid method, it was more practical. At this moment, he was communicating with the people in the underwater thrusters below. "How is it? Did you find anything?" "Sir Garcia, there is nothing here. Let's search further ahead." "Damn it. Is today going to be another day where there is nothing?" Just as Garcia was complaining, there was a sudden news from below. "Sir, there is movement. There is a faint yellow light 90 kilometers in front of me. Speed up." The free satellite and underwater thrusters were activated at almost the same time and headed in that direction. 90 kilometers was a process of acceleration. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived. Soon, Garcia's control room transmitted back images from the underwater thrusters. In the deep water, a person was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the water. Above his head was a huge 9-story pagoda. The pagoda was emitting surging mysterious yellow chi, isolating the surrounding lake water. The mysterious yellow chi was protecting the person inside. He seemed to be cultivating. Looking at this person, Garcia was stunned for a moment. In the end, a sentence came out of his mouth. "Damn. It's actually Lin Jun." Garcia knew about Lin Jun, but because he was far away from the sandy beach, he didn't participate in the encirclement of Lin Jun. Lin Jun disappeared after that, but he didn't expect that he was hiding here. Looking at Lin Jun's mysterious yellow pagoda and the sun, moon, and star hoops on his forehead, Garcia instantly became excited. "We're rich. I'm rich. As long as we can deal with Lin Jun, we'll be able to open up this wasteland. That guy's body is full of treasures." His subordinate immediately came to his side and said, "My lord, Lin Jun isn't easy to deal with. Back when Andamandes broke through to the Divine King level, he used the elixir of dominion to push him back. We have to be careful of being bitten by him." Garcia nodded. "Of course I know that. Don't worry, as long as we imprison him, he will be like a turtle in a jar." "Sir, what do you plan to do? Did you know that this satellite used to be the vehicle of a divine king?" Garcia asked his subordinate. "I've heard of it. That's why my lord bought this satellite that the divine king abandoned. That divine king is now piloting a flying palace." "That's right. The reason I bought this satellite is because it has another function, which is to release an energy shield that envelopes the target. Back then, the Divine King couldn't comprehend a cultivation technique and couldn't calm his heart, so he simply created this energy shield and wrapped himself in it. Then, he went into seclusion here." "Then will it be able to trap him?" "Yes, it will be. At the very least, it will be before the Divine King comprehends that cultivation technique. If he doesn't comprehend it, he will never be able to leave the shield. This is called fighting to live from death. Say, if a shield can trap a divine king, will it be able to trap Lin Jun?" His subordinate was overjoyed. "It will definitely be able to. My lord, hurry up and do it. This guy is still cultivating. As long as we act fast enough, he won't be able to react in time. Don't worry. This is underwater. He won't notice." Garcia retracted the underwater thrusters and opened the bottom of the satellite. A large amount of energy blocks began to burn. The consumed energy gathered into a ball and appeared from the bottom of the satellite. It silently fell into the water. If it wasn't for the difference in color, this ball would look like a large bubble floating underwater. It slowly approached Lin Jun. From the top of the mysterious yellow pagoda, the ball fell. It quietly opened a hole and wrapped the mysterious yellow pagoda in the bubble. Then, it continued to slide down. From the top of the pagoda to the bottom of Lin Jun's body, it finally landed below the soil where Lin Jun was sitting cross-legged. The opening of the bubble quietly closed, wrapping Lin Jun, the mysterious yellow pagoda, and the soil below together. Finally, it formed a large underwater ball. This process didn't make any sound. It didn't even cause any underwater wave. Lin Jun didn't notice anything at all. When this process was over, Garcia let out a long sigh of relief. It's finally done. This energy bubble actually consumed 5 million points worth of energy block. If I couldn't capture Linjun, I would have suffered a huge loss this time. My lord, what should we do next? The next step is simple. The bubble will automatically release the lake water. Then, I will take it back. After that, I will negotiate with Linjun. I believe that this guy will choose to negotiate with me if he can't break out of the bubble. I will make him hand over the treasure slowly. If he doesn't believe me, I can also make a warrior contract. My lord, what if he doesn't agree? Humph. Then I will suffer a little loss. I will sell this bubble for 500 million points. I believe that many God King level experts will scramble for it. Garcia had already calculated everything. He let the bubble automatically drain and then slowly take it back into the satellite. The door at the bottom of the cabin opened and the bubble closed again. Linjun had unknowingly entered the satellite. Sensing that Linjun couldn't cause any more trouble, Garcia finally arrived in front of Linjun. Behind the energy bubble, Garcia laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. Linjun, oh Linjun, you think you are safe hiding at the bottom of the mirror lake? But you didn't expect this day to come, did you? Shouldn't we settle the score now? You have dealt with our Northern Regions alliance so many times. Inside the bubble, Linjun's mysterious yellow pagoda had already stopped operating. There was no longer any lake water here. It was floating quietly. As for Linjun, he didn't open his eyes immediately. After the mysterious yellow pagoda stopped operating, he suddenly made countless complicated hand seals. Pa pa pa. Finally, he clasped his hands together and made a strange hand seal. A golden light flashed around his body. Linjun slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 1198. Garcia could be considered as someone who had been through a lot, but he was actually shocked by Linjun's gaze. When he came to his senses, he felt extremely embarrassed, and even a little angry out of embarrassment. Just now, he felt that he was just an ordinary person facing a lion. Now it was a bit ridiculous. Linjun, don't try to put up a desperate fight. You don't have any other choice. Linjun looked at Garcia for a while, then said, You're from the Northern Regions Alliance? So what if I am? That's great. I need someone from the Northern Regions Alliance to help me. You're the one. With that said, Linjun suddenly pulled out the jackdaw sword. A hand seal landed on the sword, and he swung it at the bubble. He already knew that the bubble was extraordinary. It was also the reason why Garcia was so arrogant. As long as he could break it, everything would be over. Linjun had added the first move of the 9 overlapping seal technique, Akalanatha seal. Double the damage. A sword light landed on the bubble, causing it to shake violently. Garcia's face turned pale, but when he saw that the bubble had stabilized, he felt relieved. I told you to give up. Without the power of a divine king, you can't break this bubble. Is that so? Then let's try this. Linjun raised his hand again, and another seal landed on the ground. This time, Linjun didn't use the Great Vajrachakra seal. Instead, he used the third move he just learned, Outer Lion seal. Brave and courageous. The more difficult it is, the more motivated you are. Come and taste my lion's fangs. Fight. In an instant, Linjun's image merged with that of a lion. The sword in his hand flashed, and he slashed at the bubble. Under Linjun's attack, the bubble was instantly reduced to ashes. It shattered cleanly. It was obvious that Linjun still had energy left to break this attack. Clapping his hands, Linjun walked out and stood in front of Garcia, whose limbs were cold. You. Have you become a divine king? That was Garcia's only thought. You will know very soon. As a servant, how can you not understand your master's strength? Linjun grabbed Garcia's arm with both hands and pushed him against the wall. It looked as if a lion-like man was going to rape a young girl. Garcia was a quasi-god king level expert. His entire body was trembling. He wanted to resist, but he was completely unable to resist Lin Zhen's monstrous strength. "Let me go!" A light flashed between Lin Zhen's eyebrows. Crystal condensation stage spiritual force borrowed the power of the sun, moon, and star rings and blasted out. A cracking sound came from Keija's body, and a spiritual defense necklace of low-grade equipment shattered on the spot. Low-grade equipment could no longer withstand the impact of Lin Zhen's sun, moon, and star rings. Lin Zhen's second spiritual power was completely unhindered after the first strike broke the low-grade equipment. The attack landed on his opponent's spiritual sea. Keija's spiritual force that had reached the Jade Glow Perfection stage instantly fell into chaos. The sun, moon, and star ring support had tripled the strength of Lin Zhen's spiritual force. Early-stage crystal condensation stage was already comparable to the mid-late stage. This was something that even ordinary divine kings did not possess. How could Garcia withstand it? Black and white light flashed in Lin Zhen's eyes. The power of Soul Lock exploded. Garcia howled and wriggled twice before he was completely taken over. It was quite tragic. It was not that there were no quasi-god king-level divine kings in history who had their souls locked. However, Garcia was probably the first to have his soul locked while being pressed against the wall. After he stopped struggling, Keija opened his eyes again. He had become Lin Zhen's most loyal servant. "Keija greets Master. Are your subordinates loyal?" asked Lin Zhen. This was because there were a total of 36 people on a free satellite. "Don't worry, Master. My subordinates are all under my control. They definitely won't betray me." "That's good. Now, share your dimensional universe system with me. I want to see the situation here." Lin Zhen walked forward as he spoke. Keija hurriedly ran over to open the door for Lin Zhen. Then, he welcomed Lin Zhen into the core control room of the free satellite. The people they met along the way all addressed Lin Zhen as Master. Lin Zhen was very satisfied. As a top-notch martial artist, when selecting subordinates, he did not care about how this person's character was or what their past was like. A simple soul lock art could make them become the most loyal subordinates who would never betray you. Because the relationship you established based on emotions, no matter how deep it was, it could not withstand a soul lock from others. No matter how close a person was, they could betray you at any time. This was the logic of martial artists. Strength spoke. There was no need for logic. Very clearly, Keija did quite well too. This saved him a lot of trouble. After arriving at the control room, the others all left. Keija shared the situation of his dimensional universe with Lin Zhen here. Sharing was to allow the things that one could see in one's dimensional universe to appear in another's dimensional universe. Most of the things that both of them could see were the same. What Lin Zhen needed to see was the situation in the Northern Region's Alliance's shopping mall. As a member of the Galactic Beast Clan, Lin Zhen could only see the Galactic Beast Clan's shopping mall. On the other hand, the Galactic Beast Clan was a loose organization. Lin Zhen had not seen many members of the Galactic Beast Clan in a team. Therefore, although this clan was not small, they were the least disciplined and unified. Within the shopping mall of the Galactic Beast Clan, the number of goods was pitifully small. Lin Zhen wanted to buy a flying equipment, but there were none left. Previously, through Hai Yun, he found out that the Northern Region's Alliance had high-grade wings. The reason why he used Soul Lock Keija was mainly because of this. When Keija opened the Northern Region's Alliance's shopping mall, Lin Zhen indeed saw many good things. This is a flying palace. Lin Zhen first saw 2 flying palaces. A low-grade one was priced at 500 million. The other was a middle-grade flying palace, priced at 3 billion. The flying palace had both flying and defensive functions. If one hid in a low-grade palace, as long as there were enough energy crystals, even a quasi-divine king would never be able to break it. Regardless of whether it was physical attacks or mental attacks, they would not be able to shake it. The middle-grade one was even more insane. Even a divine king would not be able to shake it. It was practically an indestructible tortoise shell. He wondered what kind of person would be able to sell a flying palace. Other than the flying palace, Lin Zhen also saw a domain-type equipment. Low-grade domain-type equipment, red sun halo. A fire-type person with this domain-type equipment would definitely have a huge increase in strength. Although it was a low-grade equipment, it was still priced at 300 million. It was slightly cheaper than the flying palace. Lin Zhen's gaze fell on the flying palace. There were more flying palace. There were a few low-grade and middle-grade ones. Among them, there was a high-grade wing that was ranked first.